Hello, everyone. Oh, I don't have my overlay on. Thanks for joining. This is our fortnightly stream of our Patreon members' games. I've downloaded the ones that need downloading. I've sorted a queue to see which games that we've played before and which we've seen on stream before and which ones are new. And we're going to start off with the ones that can be played in browser, I think. And then we'll go on to the newer games. Then we'll go on to games we haven't seen for a while. And then there's a couple of games that we've seen in the last couple of months that probably won't get prioritized. Hope you're all doing good. I am... Oh yeah, thank you. My normal blue jacket had to go in the wash because turns out woolly jackets get stinky really quickly. So I've got my silly pink lounge lizard jacket on today. That I think everyone should own a pink blazer. Just having a look at what's on the list. And those of you who have been in the Discord and kind of keeping up to date on stuff will know I've been talking about kind of maybe changing the way we do these streams eventually so that the supporters games are mixed in with the other games. I'm not totally set on that yet, but we'll see what happens. I will not make any changes until I find something that kind of is going to help benefit everyone in some way. Yeah, so let's check out the browser playable games first. So we've got Banners. This is Cesareth's game. So I haven't seen this one yet. Cesareth has been making lots of kind of small scope games that feel like they could be premium or mobile games. All the information you need about how this channel works is on my website. That's why I have the links up during streams. But this is the stream that is specifically for Patreon supporters. Micro Tactics RPG. Okay. In a browser. Let's see what this is. You are Captain Morgan Bernhard. Please don't use all caps for large blocks of text like this. It's just UX 101, Accessibility 101 stuff. I've said it lots of times, so I'm not going to go into detail or explain why, but do not use all capitals for full sentences and certainly not for full paragraphs. Begin patrol. A routine patrol. Bandits spotted at the crossroads. Okay. Deserters have taken the crossroads. I don't care about the story, and I care even less if it's going to be in all caps. Right. Tap your captain's Judgebringer cavalry to select it.
Yes.
Blue tiles show where you can move. Tap a blue tile. If enemies are nearby after moving, they'll be marked in red for you to click and attack. Okay. Blue tiles show where you can move. Okay.
Yes.
You're saying tap a blue tile. I click on a guy. I tap a blue tile. It doesn't do anything. So you're saying I need to right click because...
Yes.
Okay. So I click there.
Yes.
I tap a blue tile. Then I click again to confirm the move. Thanks, Meat Lab. Select your unit to attack.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
you got a little bit of a UX problem here because it's such a standard in strategy games to select units with left and then issue orders with right. So you use left for selecting and deselecting, and then you use right for clicking where to attack or to issue an order of where to move. And because of the way that this is implemented in a browser, the right click just brings up all of the kind of controls to do full screen and stuff, which is a little bit unintuitive.
Yes.
Right, now they said I can attack, but I can't see an option to, so... Oh, they do it automatically, okay. Unacted units dig in for... Okay. So if you don't move your guys, they just stay where they are and they regain some health. That's a nice little trade-off in, like, if you're trying to make a relatively minimalistic game, which this seems like it's going for, then that's quite nice, having, like, inaction actually do something. If you choose not to move someone, they just kind of regain some health or something. Okay.
Captain.
Not too hard either. Seem to be doing alright, even though I'm, you know, commentating and not thinking very hard.
Yes. Yes.
Feels pretty good so far. Okay, crossroads are clear. It's telling me I've got bows now. I didn't have them last time. These guys have got an artifact. The Judgebringer. One damage per soldier this round. Okay. It's a strange mix of things because the music is really kind of solemn and heavy. And this interface is very flat and sort of... I wouldn't say casual mobile, but it's kind of in that direction. I think those things can work together, but it feels slightly at odds. It's very interesting that we've just been playing Bad North, because I think Bad North is a really interesting example. I keep saying interesting, sorry. A really good example of like how you can mix minimalist aesthetics with like a more kind of gritty feeling medieval thing. Yeah, I think all the individual parts of it, I'm just... Sorry, I can't... oh, it's Giggles. So I kind of couldn't see your name, Giggles, in my chat, because it was in the cursed blue colour that I can't read. I think all the individual parts of this look and sound great. It's just whether or not they go together in a convincing way. Okay. Is that a hill? It's up on a... hovering? Hills give ranged units 1 range. Position matters, use the terrain. Okay.
Yes, Captain.
Got a load of little... Yeah, just the main problem I'm having is with like what actually happens when you select and deselect stuff. It feels there's something about selecting and then moving with the same button that feels a little bit...
Captain. Yes.
Takes a little while to get used to. Okay, so I put my cavalry up on the hill. Presumably that takes away the height advantage that their archers would have because we're on the same level as them now. But I don't know.
Yes, Captain.
Yes. Yes. Captain.
It's just disappeared. What's happened there? I've just lost all visual on the game. We've lost visual, Captain. It's just stopped working. I'll try and restart it. It could be my connection. Hopefully the connection is going to hold out this stream. Last week I had a bad stream connection wise. I think it ended up being my machine rather than my local network. So I am going to have to rebuild my machine at some point in the next 6 months, I think. I've got a PSU upgrade for it that I'm going to do soon. I think it needs that. Okay, banners. I would like to have played that for longer, but I just cannot get that to reload. So we're going to check out That's Not My Bowl. So just to see what the dev said in their notes on banners, because I didn't read it before we started, and I'm trying to pay more attention to that. I am most interested in the campaign, as I assume the multiplayer will not make sense during the stream. Please let me know your overall impression, where you lost interest, and what would make you play another round. Well, you know your stuff. Okay. Well, I didn't lose interest. I wanted to play another round. There was some sort of bug that made all the graphics go away, so we couldn't continue. The things I would fix: take the all caps font out. I understand that there is a stylistic reason you've put it in. It makes your game hard to read for people with dyslexia, for people with lower reading ages in general, and for people who just aren't paying much attention. All caps font, always bad. I feel like I've said this lots and lots of times on the channel. It's when you kind of overlook something simple like that I've talked about lots of times, it means that I end up wasting time rediscussing it rather than talking about something else. I feel like the heaviness of the music and the very kind of low poly aesthetics of the game could fit together a little bit better, and I'm not sure how you would do that yet. There's something about like the sleek flatness of the interface that doesn't really make me think that this is going to be a game with like story to read and character voices, which you have put in there. So I would just kind of try and whittle it down a little bit more what it is. The other thing was that for such a visually minimalistic game, it felt a little bit to open up that panel for each character and see all of those stats, because I feel like that's slightly at odds with who is going to be drawn to this sort of game. And it's not necessarily that the stats shouldn't be there or they shouldn't be available, but having them like take up the whole middle of the screen whenever you're using the unit feels like they're more important than they should be. And you know, dev of that game, please go and watch or listen to the first episode of our new podcast, One More Run, where we talked about Bad North. We did like a massive deep dive on Bad North. It's a different game. It's not turn-based, but I feel like it's doing lots of the same things you're trying to do with this game thematically and aesthetically and everything. And I think it would be a really good idea to take some cues from that game. So yeah, sorry we can't get into that one a little bit more. But let's just see what the next one is. So That's Not My Bowl. I like the description of this. Girlfriend said I am playing and making only aggressive games. So as a challenge, I tried to fit some things together. So this is a month-old project about cats. That's funny. Music is my Suno Pro. Boo. I'm sure you know a musician who has a massive hard drive of silly bits of music that they're not using that will give you a piece of music so you don't have to use Suno. I mean, no one has to use Suno. OpenGameArt.org has loads of music on. I've been credited as a musician on dozens of games because people have taken my music from OpenGameArt.org. Plenty of perfectly fine usable music on there, and also because it's not released on any platform. You know, most of the music you find in a big free open source library like OpenGameArt.org is never been released on something like Spotify, and that means that content creators, when they play your game, they won't get hit with copyright strikes. Whereas increasingly we're seeing people buy quote-unquote licensed music from a big composer, they put it in their game, and then the content creators get hit with copyright strikes because that composer hasn't specifically cleared it to be used in that way. Yeah, no real reason to be using stuff like Suno, I don't think. Unless you just hate musicians and you don't want to use their work. It's done a good job though, sort of like this kind of upbeat, cutesy lo-fi jazz cafe type thing. Okay, fish fillet cook. Okay. Chop. That was wonderfully tactile, the clicking to chop. Really like that. Let me just full screen it. Chop, 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 chop. Boop. Chicken stew. Cooking for the cats. I've got to alternate between the different meals the cats want. The cat hisses if you click if you click at the wrong time. This is very cute. What's that? What's that button up there? I can't see. Round, fluffy, white. That's what, it's one of my many nicknames. Hello. I'm round, fluffy, white. This is a banger, though. I think Suno did well on this one. Preferences learned. Round, fluffy, white and chicken stew is accepted. Chunky, round, grey. Chunky, round... They both... Okay, okay. I don't know if I'm supposed to actually memorize this, but round, fluffy, white loves the fish. It's a fishy guy. Chunky, round, grey likes the chicken stew. Okay. Says go, no food. Okay. Poorer ups. This is stopping me seeing what it says underneath, which is a shame. The UX of this is pretty well designed for a month-long project, I think. Like, we've got... There's lots of little attention to detail things here that I sort of expect of a very interface-driven game, but sometimes you'll see someone who's made a game like this where you're just kind of clicking on buttons and working with an interface, and they haven't done these things, and they've spent much longer on it. So, for example, having a hover over mode for the button that lets me know that that's a button. And when I mean, I know you would think... that looks like a button. People know they can click it. But having that additional hover over mode where it lights up and here it gets ears, right? That really makes it very clear it's a button. You'll also notice the cursor grows when it goes over it. None of these are things you absolutely have to do. But if your game is all about interacting with an interface and not a character in a world, then you need to make the interface have some character, because that's how people feel like, you know, that's the sort of thing that makes people feel like you care about what you've done and you've put some time into it, and it just makes it pleasing to interact with. So there's lots here that is great, and it's surprising to see it in a month-old game. And when I've seen games like this that are like, you know, whether they're incrementals or OS simulators, but games where you are playing inside of a computer and they have like worked on it for a year and they still don't have these kind of features in, like this little highlight there. But yeah, the make sure that you're not hiding the text with this, because this can be much smaller and it will still have the same effect because it's moving, right? Movement puts things right at the top of the visual hierarchy, so don't put it right over the text. Okay, let's cook some stuff for cats. We can go up to tier 2 now. That's Roger Barnett. That's Roger Barnett. Can't believe the man who single-handedly made all of Dead Island 2 is in the chat. Sardine. Choppity choppity choppity. Pumpkin. Yum, yum, yum. What just happened? Sardine, choppity, choppity, choppity. Pumpkin. Something strange is happening here. Oh, does this one not need to be cooked? It's got cook there up on the list of things, but we go to sardine, I chop, I do pumpkin, and then it doesn't go to cook. So I don't know what's happening there. Let's do pumpkin chicken instead. Pumpkin. Chicken. So when we have the stages that don't have a... When we do pumpkin, right? It doesn't really do anything. It just goes on to the next one. And then when we do chicken, we get to chop something. And there wasn't a cook thing on that one because this presumably is a raw chicken meal. There's something really nice and tactile about chopping the things. And I'm not necessarily saying that you need to have a little mini interaction for every single ingredient you do. But I think if you're not going to have an equivalent of chopping for the other things, then having the player click and drag the ingredient, so they click it and drag it down here and then they click it into here, or they have to click and drag and combine the things, because that clicking to place the thing here and then chopping it works really well. But when you're just clicking to add the pumpkin to the recipe, but it doesn't, it just sort of like immediately goes, it feels like... It feels confusing because it's not clear what I've done. I've just clicked on pumpkin. So I think if you don't want to like add some sort of dragging interaction or mini game to doing the simpler things where you don't get to chop, then the best thing to do would be to like have the dish down here or something, and then when the ingredient is triggered, it just sort of, the icon flies into the dish or something like that, because that's a stage that is very unclear. It's very clear when I have an active thing to do, like chopping the chicken breast, what is happening, because I see something change state. But when I'm just adding the pumpkin to the dish, it's not as obvious what is happening there. Rog and Natalie in the chat. I was literally telling someone the other day about our harrowing Delta Green campaign with the... where we carried a guy around in the boot for half an hour and then argued about it. And then my character ended up executing them anyway, and it was mildly upsetting. So this is where you take the dishes that you've prepared and then you try them on the different cats, and then you get the information about what meals they like. I think there's something really nice here. Like, I think there's a lot of things in this game at the moment that are communicated through like text and stuff that it might be better to make a little bit more visual. Even just stuff like here where these are grayed out, it might be cool to have like almost like the back of a card, and some of this is kind of covered with like I don't know, like a little pattern of question marks or something, because it makes it feel a little bit dry and sort of databasey at the moment, which it's going to be because that's what it is, right? But I think if you were going to kind of continue on this project and expand it into a bigger commercial game, I think there's something really nice about the loop of like you cook stuff, and you're either... The way that I understand the game working now from this very brief play of it is that you're either kind of you go to a cat cafe and you already know what they like, so you just kind of fill your vehicle up with the stuff that you know they like, and you go there and you make the cats very happy. Or you're doing like an experimentation run where you don't know what they like yet, so you're kind of trying them with a range of dishes, and then that gives you the information about what they like in order to kind of take the thing to them. And that's kind of, even though it's a relatively simple game, that creates some like sense of player agency, because you can either be like just trying to focus on making them happy or learn what makes them happy. And that means that there can be like different kind of almost mental modes you're working in as you played this game. I'm going to do one more round. But yeah, there's lots of physical interactions in this kitchen that I think you could make a little bit clearer. Just like when there's something where it's not obvious what's happening. I'm going to make one of everything. Pan-seared fish. And then sardine and chicken bowl. Look at that. Not to my personal taste, but... So you see, we went through the pumpkin stage and it just kind of felt like nothing happened because that one doesn't have a active process involved in it. And it doesn't have to be an active process. It can be like just an animation happening, but there's nothing to really communicate that something happened apart from the tick there. Right, we've got one of everything this time. So now we can say, okay, now we've got like a kind of almost like a little deck builder battle, but with the cards that we've made in the kitchen. So we go, okay, I know that you like a sardine snack, but I don't know if you like pan-seared fish. Now, I don't know how much their tastes are authored, but I'm going to guess that if the developers like made these deliberately and it's not random, then this guy, there's a chance that he likes all the fish things. So I'm going to try him with the pan-seared. He doesn't like the pan-seared. Oh. Slim Elegant is my rap name. Okay, have the stuff you like then. Let's try. Well, I'm just going to give you what you like. Chunky round cream. Why don't you have some pumpkin chicken, you chunky round boy? Yeah. Okay. So they have a green tick for stuff they accept, and then they have a heart for a favorite. I quite like this, and the fact that it's only a month of work is very impressive. There's something really appealing there. I had to turn that. I quite, despite it being Suno, I quite like the meow 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 song. I like it when there's a song that goes meow meow meow. It's a good thing. What else have we got here? Carnholt. I haven't played this yet. I've seen it posted about in the Discord. Got this guy. Okay. Welcome back to life. I don't remember anything. Your memories were useless for your new task. I discarded them. What task? A few years ago, a god died. But he refused his own death and came back. I need you to kill him again. Okay. Good. I'll lend you power. Beast will flock to you and I'll bind their wills to yours. You will kill a god. Kill a dog? I'm not going to kill a dog. Let me just do this so we don't cut off too much of it around the edge. Orun, Hunter of the Grey Sea. I see mana. I see creatures. Got some sparklies. Encounter, 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 encounter. Okay. I think we're doing a Magic the Gathering or a Gwent or something. Okay, grid-based card battler. Looks a little bit like the Elder Scrolls one they released a while ago. At the beginning of your turn, gain 1 armor. Gains 1 armor. Okay, deals 3 damage. Got spells and creatures. The spells have all of this blue stuff coming out of them. One of the things that card games often do is have a very different sort of overall visual shape for spells versus creature cards. You've done that a little bit here with this bit, but it's not quite as immediately noticeable. You've got this kind of like icy mana stuff up at the top as well, which I guess is what you're trying to achieve with that. But it's not quite as noticeable as having a whole different shape. Okay, so we've got 4 mana to spend. What I'm going to do is put 2 sentinels down. And then I'm going to use Rend on the 2 guys on the inside. So they've only got 2 health now. And stay where... I'll move this one over there. So I'm trying to protect this guy. That's my leader. When Uron attacks a wounded creature, he gains 2 attack shards. I thought I'd used my leader to attack then. I was like, why isn't he dead? I'd used the wrong one. Blood Ward. Use 1 life of one of your creatures to give another 4 armor. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a life from my big boss man and give armor to this one, because this one's surrounded by loads of enemies. If they bleed, you'll bleed. Good to know. Okay. Put some sentinels back at the back. I don't have enough... Oh, I should have played the Dreadnought. I've wasted a mana this turn. Yeah, this is pretty great. I think you're probably going to need a proofreading pass on a lot of the text. There's some bits of text that feel a little bit kind of clunky or unclear what they mean. Might be a translation issue. But the game looks gorgeous. You've done a very, very sensible thing here as well, because you basically themed the entire game around cool undead animals, right? And I don't know if there's anyone in the chat now who has been watching this channel since the very beginning. When I looked at... I probably mentioned this more than this one time, but I remember it specifically in... I did a video essay on a game called Pterodentium, which was a Pokemon-type monster training game. And one of the things I was trying to say there is if you make a game about collecting stuff, and people's usual reference point is like the big budget version of that thing, like you're making a game based on Pokemon or you're making a game based on Hearthstone, whether it's cards or a monster battler or whatever, the people who are fans of that genre, their reference point is like a big budget game with loads of variety in. So if you want people to be, if you want to make an indie scope game and you want people to be accepting of the fact that you have fewer cards or fewer monsters, you need to pick a theme that enables you to have a smaller group of stuff without it feeling stingy. And what they've done here is, because the entire game is based around these kind of like spooky, kind of Norse feeling undead animals, that makes it kind of okay for this to have less variety in it than a Gwent or a Hearthstone or whatever the kind of, you know, nearest neighbor of this is design wise. So, you know, the example I gave before is if you're making a Pokemon game, if you're making a creature battler, if you theme that around dinosaurs, your audience is going to be more accepting of the fact that it doesn't have as many creatures in as Pokemon. If you theme it around undead, your audience might be more accepting of the fact that there are fewer options because you've narrowed down the theme, and now the kind of amount of content in the game matches up with the theme. Whereas if you just straight away go, I'm going to make Hearthstone or I'm going to make Pokemon, people, it might not be a reasonable expectation, but your fans of that genre are going to compare your game to the AAA one, and it's, you know, whether your game costs half as much as that or not is not really that relevant to them. That's still going to be where they get their reference point from. So I think this game has been very, very smart in its theming. It looks really cool, but also you just don't have to make as much stuff if you have a narrower theme. Just like if you were making an RPG and you said, I'm making an RPG, but it's only about the stealth classes, or it's only about being a knight, or it's only about being a wizard or a druid or something. You narrow down the design space and the expectations of how much content there's going to be, and that means that because you're making less stuff, you can still make it to all like a high level of polish and stuff. You know, this is what people often miss about the kind of make small games advice. It's like, don't make a small version of like, where you can make a small version of a big polished game, but if you do, it needs to feel coherent in itself, rather than you've tried to make Skyrim but you've just missed loads of stuff out. You know, it needs to feel like everything in the game still makes sense with that kind of smaller scope. Push 3 toward the singularity, all the creature on the same line and column. Yeah, so this really needs a proofreading pass on some of this English. I don't know what the singularity is yet. I don't know what that is. Oh, this is the singularity. Okay. Yeah, I kind of confusing. Or put a capital letter if it's the capital, if it's the name of this, but I think there's still a better way of wording that. I do think we would benefit from the spell cards having a slightly different shape to the frame rather than just this additional decoration, because the additional decoration doesn't help you to quickly differentiate between the spell and the creature cards. Gives 2 attack shards and 4 life shards and 1 speed shards to a creature. That's quite cool. Just a big old upgrade spell. Right, we're going to play maybe 4 rounds of this, I think, just to get a proper sense of it. I don't know what an altar is. I guess we get rid of something. Okay, I'm going to sacrifice a rend spell rather than a creature, because the creatures, our base creatures, get more defense every round, so they seem pretty good to have a lot of, because you want to get them down early. When Aravar deals damage, he gathers the Knight X, where X is the number of damage he dealt. I'm going to get him then, because that synergizes quite well with that upgrade card that we just got. We greet you, traveler. We are togetherness. What are you? We are memories of dying creatures fused into this shell of flesh. No, you're not. You're just the bear from Annihilation. I know you. Seen you in my dreams. We remember what the dead forget. We trade. We want the gold you found on the dead. We want the... There's too much text here. This isn't a story-driven genre of game. There's just too many lines. I think you could get the same mood of this character in 2 lines, right? You don't need to have this full interaction of click, click, click. Because what that will do is the more someone plays the game, the more they're just going to be hammering the click through these dialogue scenes, and then they're going to misclick and then make some strategic mess up. So just like be conscious of the fact that although there's something cool and evocative here in the way that this is written and presented and the characterization and everything, it's not necessarily what someone will come to your game for, and you can get just as much of this mood and character with just, you know, we want your coin from the dead, we want the memories that infused them. That's interesting enough. It gives us a sense of why this character wants some coins. You can do it in 1 or 2 lines and then get on with the function of the character. Okay. Fleeting Echo, 2/2 ephemeral creature. What does ephemeral? Ephemeral creatures die at the end of your turn. They do not count towards your controlled creatures. Meditate, discard a card to draw 2. That kind of stuff's always useful. This is how much coin we've got. We can have a Well, that's remove a card from it. Okay, so this is pretty much the same as the Slay the Spire kind of shop. What's this guy? Deal 2 damage to all creatures. When the Apotheosis deals damage, gather the Knight X, where X is the number of damage dealt. Shards of the Night, Knight X. It's like, I don't know what Knight means yet. So there's a lot of tool tips here, which are like, it's kind of technical language within technical language. Duskbeast Broodmother. When a creature enters the battlefield, lose 1 life and give it 2 attack shards and 3 life shards. Okay, so she just hangs back and gives her life to boost other things when you spawn them. That, again, synergizes with the last 2 cards that I bought, so I'm going to go for her. Enrage, dig a corpse, create a corpse in a random. That sounds fun as well. We'll get one of them. Okay. So someone was saying in the chat that if we need text on these, it probably suggests that the icons aren't legible enough. I think that's probably fair. Another thing I would look at is we can see where we are here, but I would have a highlight for where we've been, right? Because although that might not be that important after the fact, that is kind of your sense of progress, right? So as the character moves from the bottom up to the top, that is kind of like a progress bar going up to 100% that makes you feel good. And everything you do to mark the trail you've taken helps the player to feel like a sense of progress. So it's not a cognitively important thing for them to understand the game, but it's an emotionally important thing. So what I would do is, as we move up here, take all the previous icons and stuff that we've passed by, and all the ones that we didn't do, like grey them out, make them go away, make the text really, really faint, and the ones that we did do something to show that we've passed through them. And then up here, you probably want to do something to differentiate the ones that you can click on now, i.e. at the moment it's the encounter and the quest, from the ones further up. Right, so the encounter and the quest are our current options. They should be as visible as they are now. These ones further up, maybe they're a little bit grayed out, maybe they're a little bit more faint or something. But at the moment, there's just some sort of like, again, information hierarchy stuff here where everything looks as important as each other. And I think we could maybe even like the path that we took that went encounter, altar, shop, maybe this could be like a red streak to show that that's the way that we've been, and to make us kind of feel a sense of achievement. But I think making it clear which ones of these are currently clickable is kind of the most important thing on there. It's omnidirectional. Let's try it out. We'll try it out on the next one. Okay, it's just, I don't have enough corpses. Oh, this guy takes a corpse. That's another resource up here, this one. Okay. So I need to play stuff that's going to die first to get corpses to power up my other cards. I'll put the Broodmother over here where she's less likely to get beaten up. This looks like it's going to be tough. Who's this guy? Who's that? Heavy. It's just called Heavy. Sentinels around the Broodmother. That's draw one. How do I know how many corpses I have? Are they on the board? Because the problem is you've got a mana counter here, and then you've got this above it, and because it's positioned next to it, that communicates that they're of the same type. So this is 2 out of 4 mana. This looks like it's saying I've got 3 corpses. Now I understand that that's not what it means, and this is actually the button to draw one, and I spend 3 corpses to do it. But because it's positioned so closely to this other type of counter, it makes it seem like they're 2 things of the same category. And I know some people watching this will think you're being really nitpicky, but this is how UI design works. These are Gestalt principles that are used in graphic design as well that follow over into UI design. I've done video lectures on UI design before where we talk about this stuff. You can go and search them on the page. I'll link to them in the description if you're watching the VOD. But this is a kind of thing where people will get very confused by this, and it is because it is right next to this thing. So this doesn't read as a cost because it's the only place where we can see a count of corpses, and it's right next to a count of how much mana we currently have. And that kind of changes how we interpret it, because when we see things close together, we think that they're related, because they usually are. Use 1 life of one of your creatures to give another 4 armor. So we're going to give the brood mother some armor from one of our creatures. The other thing is I think we could do with a little bit more color distinction between the guys we're fighting and the guys that are on our side. Got too many things I can't play because they cost corpses. Don't have enough mana to play him. Don't have enough corpses to play those. I feel like I've... Lots of kind of trading resources between things on the board. Like taking health from one to give another one armor and stuff like that. Enemy with 2 ends. Okay. My big boy's going in. Shard of the Night. Okay, so he creates a Shard of the Night, which is like a single shot spell. I'm not sure I had any way of knowing what that was before I created it, but it's quite cool. I like that effect. Seedlang, I agree, yeah. I do think it needs a bit more distinction between stuff. Yeah, I would really limit the amount of text that is just for story. Wherever you can, have them say one thing that gives a little bit of characterization and story, but is mainly just there to indicate what's happening mechanically in the game. The thing is, when you have a physical card game like Magic the Gathering, you've got the art there to tell the story, and then if you have any text to tell the story, it's very clearly indicated to be flavor text. In Magic the Gathering cards, they put it in italics. So you can kind of... There's a language in the game that allows you to quickly look at that, and if you care about it at the moment, you can read it, and if you don't care about it at the moment, you can say... You can just, like, visually filter it out, because you know that italic text means it's the story and not something that you need to play the game. The problem with inserting story into a game like this, or a Slay the Spire type game, or anything that people are there primarily to play a game rather than experience a story, is every time you present people with characters talking that isn't what they're interested in, they're going to start hammering the mouse button to click through it, and that doesn't just make them make mistakes like I mentioned earlier, it also is going to kind of lead them to rushing the rest of the game as well. You don't want that. I'm just going to have a quick look at one of the other characters. There's quite a lot of these. So it looks like we have kind of like hero characters we can have in our deck, and whichever deck we choose is who we start off with. But we can have more than one, because last time I got that human guy in my deck. Yeah, so let's do one more kind of quick look at the visual design of this, and someone was just saying it feels like there could be more contrast in certain places. I think you're right. I think one thing to look at is the actual color of the board, because this gray is very, very close to like the gray you've used in all the backgrounds of the cards, and I think even just tilting the board so that it's clearly a different... I'm gonna color it in. No, I'm not. I don't have time today. We've got too many games. But like, also a lot of these guys have the same color background, and I think even just kind of, because what happens when someone reads an image, right? If you ever use DALL-E, like the early image generators, and you watch them generate where they sort of like do the broad stroke shapes of colors and then they fill the details in afterwards. That is how our brains read images. It's that kind of order. You read these big like blocks of shapes and color first, and then the details of what's kind of distinct in that image takes like longer for your brain to process it, and it's kind of like, you know, fractions of seconds. But bearing in mind, when you're playing a game like this, you know, the more I've played this game, the more I want to be able to quickly see these images and know what the rules of the card are, right? So I see my hand of cards, and I see that I've got 6 things in my hand, and if I've played the game a lot, the images just tell me the rules because I've played the game enough. But the more similar these images are to each other, the harder it is going to be for me to get to that stage where I can just quickly read the image and understand what the whole card is. So having a little bit more variation in, I get that thematically you want these to be kind of grey and dismal backgrounds, but having a distinction between like the color of the background and the character in the foreground, so that this card, and this card read as different from each other, will just help quite a bit with onboarding and like people being able to play the game more quickly. And then, yeah, I mean, if you're going to go down this route of they all have this kind of blue-grey, then make the background of the board a different color. You know, make it more of this mossy color or red, or just whatever color you're not using in the cards a lot. But yeah, this is incredibly polished. I really, really like what I see here. I might schedule a longer stream to just sit down and play this for a couple of hours, because it looks like there's quite a lot of depth here, and I want to actually play the game properly rather than just like sit and pick at the UX of it. Infused Sentinels. So these guys, instead of gaining armor, they give something to your commander. Just kill one of them with spells before they even get a turn. Yeah, this title text is going to be hard to read on a smaller thing, I agree. The letter spacing might be the main problem, actually, rather than just the font, but... Give me another end. No, it didn't give me another end. Okay. I feel like the game is giving me too many corpse-driven... it's giving me too many corpse-driven cards before I know what corpses are or how to kind of use them. It seems like there's some sort of strategy that is about deliberately creating corpses. Now, the problem is that the concept of a corpse in Hearthstone means a particular thing. They added a corpse mechanic with the Death Knight, so like a unique resource that the Death Knight has. And it is just how many creatures have you had that have previously died. It means something different here. Here they are, look. So do I have to capture them? So if I press draw 1 here, it doesn't count as me having 3 corpses. So these are actually on the board. So I'm thinking maybe I have to... You have to go over here and capture them. Okay. That's a cool mechanic in its own right, because it gives you another reason to move around the space. Put that there so it blocks them getting to my big guy. And you can kind of deploy stuff deeper into the board if you've taken over more of the board. So you don't always have to like start things on your side like a chess match and gradually move it across, which is quite nice. It makes it feel very snappy and fast. See, here we're getting a bit more variation in the colors in the card. Yeah, I kind of get what they're trying to do with like making the starting set all look similar to each other, but it does make it kind of harder to quickly get the information you need about the card. When this creature gains armor, it gains that much attack until the end of the turn. Yeah, I'm gonna try and schedule a longer playtest of that at some point, because I could probably sit there and play that for quite a chunky long session. That is Carnholt. If you're watching this back on the VOD, I will put links to all of the games which are public. Some of them won't be. Let's check out Riversong. Some of the games submitted this time will be private playtests. We'll probably be going for another 2 hours. I will try and get round to all of the games on the list. Let's end a Riversong. Right, what are we doing here? We're building a stockpile, small storage for village goods. Workers deliver products here and pick up supplies for their tasks. Collectors will retrieve items left on the ground. This is a very cute set of assets. It's like got this carpety vibe to the grass. Okay. Where do we want to be? Nice little hill. There's an obstacle here. Let's be here. Over by the river. I can move with WASD. I can't move with the middle mouse button or right click. And I would expect something on the mouse to allow me to click in and drag the screen around, which I can't do. That feels strange to have a game that has a tutorial in and stuff, but doesn't have like some of the basic functionality you'd expect to have for camera controls. Always feels a bit strange when you've kind of got to the point where you've got a tutorial in your game, but some of the just really basic features that someone might expect from your game genre are not in there. Lumberjack hut cuts down nearby trees. Wood is left on the ground and collected to storage buildings. Okay, here we go. So this feels like it's going to be quite a light kind of colony type game. It's very cute. We've got some very pastoral music. The green is very green. Oh, we're getting a change of time. What do we get to do at night time? Do we just sit through the night time? Are they carrying on working? We had this with Knights of Nil the other day. Consider how you do nighttime lighting in a game like this, because it's not very interesting to look at something that is realistically dark. And I know that's not like full darkness, but sometimes doing dark as a sort of tint to blue, doing night as a tint to blue or a tint to purple or something, rather than as actually reducing the amount of light, so that you can still see. I think the only times you actually want to use real darkness in video games is when you are doing it for an atmospheric or mechanical reason, like you want the player to not be able to see, you want the player to have to use a light source, or you're doing horror and you want the player to be scared or whatever. In a lot of games, having actual darkness is not particularly like the best way of handling something like a night cycle, because it's not a game where, you know, can you see is supposed to be part of the sort of skill checks of the game, you know. Some workers couldn't find a nearby home last night. That's because I can't build any. We're going to make a well. I'll put it over here, because it probably makes sense to have it further away from the river. Let's have some houses. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no, like, global count of how much wood and stuff I have, because it's just whatever's on there. which is fine. I'm not saying that as a complaint or anything. I'm just thinking out loud as I learn how the game works. So sometimes when I'm describing stuff, I'm just kind of letting you know what's going through my head, because that's helpful to have when anyone playtests your game, getting them to like tell you once they've learned or realized something about the game. It can be quite helpful. But what's this? Hunter cabin. Okay. 2 hunter cabins. Put some more houses down, just because I can. Oh, the wells need... You have to have quite a lot of wells unless you want to put your houses really close together. Okay. I imagine working on these for a while and then watching other people play it is probably quite infuriating, because building games in particular, just like watching someone else's play style of like how they do stuff, is going to be like, oh, why are you doing that? You could say the same for any sort of game, but I think with building games you have an interesting sort of like, how far do people go towards trying to min-max the game versus doing something that looks pretty. And I think when your game is presenting itself as really chill and casual, which is what this game is doing, people are going to lean more towards just putting stuff where they would like it to be in their fictional town, rather than putting stuff where, you know, the game is going to score them the most. It's not like a Islanders or something where we're placing stuff down and it's immediately giving us feedback on like adjacency bonuses and stuff. So already to me this is kind of like presenting itself as chill, do what you want, put stuff where you want. Villagers use roads to move goods between buildings. Okay, make sure your buildings are connected. Roads tool. Okay, that looks more like a piece of paper than a road. We need to connect our roads, our buildings up. Beautiful. What a lovely little town. Very cute. I would really love to be able to do a little bit more camera manipulation using the mouse. Can we rotate these as well? Just being able to rotate them would give it a bit more visual variety. The actual interactions of placing things, that feels really nice. That's very charming, the way that they plop down. Big fan of that. I think one of the things that you're going to need to think about, or make sure that you're clear on as you work on this, is how much are you leaning this towards the kind of player that wants to just make a pretty place that looks like a real place, versus kind of scoring and stuff like that. Because at the moment I'm just sort of playing it like a toy. I'm just placing stuff down in a only half thinking about it kind of way. I've got more villagers now. It's not totally clear to me when that's happening or why. You know, I've built more houses. Also, this count... What does this count have to do with the amount of characters I see walking around? Because there's definitely more than 10 characters walking around. These are not yet built, these blue ones, I think. I feel like making them translucent would be a better piece of visual language for that. Let's speed up, see what happens. The short demo is complete when your village reaches 50 population and 90 happiness. Keep growing and keep your people happy. Well, I can't see any way to not make them happy at the moment. Maybe we put some more stockpiles down so they don't have to travel as far. Yeah, there's a lovely kind of basic set of interactions here. Add a hunter cabin to your village. Grow 4 houses to tier 2. So those are the things I need to do. Might be worth putting a little icon on next to those if those are goals that we need to do to achieve that. Like a little empty tick box. Add a hunter cabin. I've got a hunter cabin. Grow 4 houses to tier 2. So can I... Oh, okay. These have like some upgrade stuff they need to do. They need water and meat. That's how houses work. One thing I'm feeling, and I think this happens a lot with asset packs. I'm going to assume that this is an asset pack, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that if this is an asset pack. But it is one of those examples of where if this is your own art and it's not an asset pack, you're going to be able to deal with this problem that I'm just about to talk about. But if it is an asset pack, then it's a good example of the problem with using asset packs. When I'm all zoomed out, and how am I supposed to tell what a hunter thing is versus a house, like a hunter's lodge? These are very, very similar to each other. So let's zoom in on them and look. Like, okay, the hunter's lodge has a little skull above the door. It has a different shaped door. It's fundamentally the same shaped roof and overall kind of silhouette of the house. It's tilted a little bit differently. There's these little details outside to show me meat and stuff. But when I'm looking at the whole town from this distance, it's not really distinct enough from the other buildings, right? So this might be something that's easy for you to change because, I mean, maybe there's like degrees of like subtlety here. Like maybe some of this stuff is from an asset pack and you've arranged them on these little boards in your own way, which is great if that's what you've done. But it might be a case that you need to like exaggerate the size of some of these things, like the meat table, the big block of meat. They need to be like cartoonishly large so you can see them from further away. The other thing I would do is just make that roof red or make it a color so that it just clearly stands out, and when we're zoomed out you can very quickly see which is which thing. But yeah, if I were making this art from scratch, I would try and make sure that the actual building had a different silhouette shape. Maybe it's like, you know, like a triangular building where the roof goes all the way down to the floor. It's got a red roof. It's just different in every way so that you can quickly identify what's different about it. And again, if you can't make that change because this is an asset pack and you don't have a 3D artist or whatever, that's kind of one of the reasons why you need to be careful with using asset packs. Because one of the things I've noticed with a lot of Cinti asset games is there are aspects of the game where you want the visuals to be more varied, not just from like a cosmetic point of view, but for like a game information point of view. Like I played a tower defense game recently that had Cinti assets in, and all the enemies that came in had the same physiology, right? They were the same shape. If I looked at the character, it had the same character silhouette. And anyone who's ever played like a character-driven action game knows that when you see a character in a game, you quickly read the shape and color of the character, and that lets you kind of access your little brain database to tell you how to respond to that character, right? It's one of the reasons why when you play character-driven shooters like Overwatch, the characters have very, very different visual designs and shapes so that you can read them by their silhouette and quickly respond to them. It's the same principle here. It's the same principle in the tower defense example. If I see lots of little characters and they're all the same human shape, or I see lots of little buildings and they're all the same building shape, that is kind of damaging the feedback loop between the game and my brain that goes through my eyes and allows me to quickly identify what these things are on the screen. So if you are using assets from a pack, you're going to have that issue a little bit. And that's not an argument against using assets, but I would say it's an argument against using assets that are in a style or medium that you can't edit yourself, right? So when I pick assets for my own game, when I pick pixel art assets, I only pick stuff that's in a style that I know that I can kind of edit or match in some way. If you're making 3D games, you're using like low poly stuff like this. The benefit of that is it's easy for you to tweak. It's easy for you to make changes to yourself or retexture or do those kinds of things. If you were kind of using an asset pack of ultra realistic stuff and you can't 3D model, then you're totally stuck with those things. So I like this. I like the base set of interactions in it. I can't quite work out how to make some of the things happen, if that makes sense. So, you know, I can look at the wheat farm and I can see I need to grow 4 houses to tier 2. And then I go to a house and I go, okay, how do I grow it to tier 2? I need to have meat. Okay, well, I've built hunter cabins. Why are they not hunting? And I don't know how I can affect that. So maybe I need to like build them in some sort of hunting grounds, something. Maybe I need to go out into the world and find the right place to build the hunter cabins, but that's kind of where I'm stuck here. Here's some... So maybe these guys are just sort of like... They're treated like a natural resource that just sort of stays around their area. So maybe what I need to do is build the hunter cabin out here and then make sure that there's someone living in it so that they'll actually hunt, because I built them right next to my town. But there was quite a few stages I had to go through to kind of get to that kind of realization that the food is like right out here. I'm not saying you need to necessarily spell it out for people, but let's see what it says here. Hunts nearby deer. Yeah, so you do have it well described there, but that took me a little while to get to. I'm not necessarily saying you need to tutorialize that or anything, but that's been the kind of major point of friction for progressing for me here. Let's move on to the next game. That one is called Riversong. Thanks, Hokopo, for helping people out with submission stuff. Yeah, if you're a patron, don't use the website, use the stuff that's on the Discord. Oh, wrong one. I liked it so much, I wanted to play it immediately again. Whisperwind Peak. Windows protected your PC from a video. For the smoothest journey, a controller is recommended. So smooth. Does Carnholt have a way to follow along? I think that one was on itch at the moment. I can't remember. I will add links after the stream. Also, that to just round off that discussion about asset packs, I think taking a stylized asset pack and trying to edit stuff to match it is a really good way of learning art if you don't already make art. So then, this is where we part ways for now. This island I brought you to is called Whisperwind Peak. It's a place full of magic and enchantment, and it's where I abandon all of my children. If you're to grow as my apprentice, you'll need more than practice spells and good intentions. You'll need to listen closely. The island speaks, but never louder than a whisper. These whispers are scattered across the island, tucked away in quiet corners, or stirred loose by small acts of kindness. Help those you meet, and the island will take notice. Also, don't tell social services I left you on this island. If you gather enough whispers, shrines on the island will reveal their power. New abilities, new paths, new magic. Head up the mountain path when you are ready. It will bring you to the first shrine. They've got the animalese when they talk, so I'll stop talking over it for a minute. Very nicely done. If you put that in your game, you've got to make it match the type out syllable count, because it's so annoying if they kind of carry on going after it's typed out. This feels quite nice. Come back! I don't want to stay on this island. Father, come back! Don't leave me here. Father, 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 don't leave me on this island. He's left me on an active volcano. I'm going to die in a pyroclastic flow. Oh, Father. Why did you raise me to have a Yorkshire accent when you don't have one? I don't understand. A mushroom? Don't mind if I do. That's a fun jump. That's a bit goofy, but it works. Yeah, the water looks lovely. A very kind of Wind Waker vibes. Now, today is the day we learned that Nerd Chomp is that guy that used to... I don't know if you've ever seen the memes of this guy. There used to be a guy that would go on, like, all of the Nintendo eShop games and, like, just specifically comment on what the water looked like in every game. Found some beach coins. Hello. Hello, chicken. Can I pick you up? Canyoupetthechicken.com. Hello. Hello. Oh, it's horrible, just absolutely horrible. My baby chicks have all escaped. I keep trying to gather them back into this pen. Amelia, why do you sound like Matt Berry? Why is that happening? They keep running away from me when I get close. I'm so stressed. I couldn't stand it if anything happened to them. I can't handle this chaos. Would you be willing to help me? I'm at my wit's end. If you can help me round them up, I'd be most grateful. Okay. She said help me a few more times than we needed. Baby chick, do-do-do-do-do, baby chick, do-do. That felt good. I was immediately dreading this when I saw what it was because I thought that it was going to be really random, but it feels kind of like if you're close to them, then they sort of... It's a little bit balanced between them going randomly and going just in the way that you want them to, which is nice because I think this could be a really annoying way to greet people to this game if it was a little bit more, a little bit less on rails. It's the pink jacket. The pink jacket today is Matt verifying me. Yes, it's somewhere in between Fable and Wind Waker. I think it feels a little bit what's the word? It does feel a little bit childish. I'll say that like off the bat. I think the actual art style for the characters is quite charming. The way that all of the movement apart from the jump feels quite nice. There's no kind of camera nastiness. I'm not a big fan of these. This looks like I don't know what engine this is, but it looks like the kind of Unreal terrain thing where there's just like extruded the cliffs. Kind of looks a bit... It all looks a little bit barren. It does feel a little bit childish because it doesn't have those little edges to the character designs that make this feel like an unusual world. It feels a little bit like, you know, baby's first medieval fantasy game, and a little bit more like something you'd see from like a Roblox game or something like that, rather than like a 90s Nintendo game, which is kind of what it's reaching for, or like an early 2000s Nintendo game. The thing is, you think about Link's character design, Link is meant to look like a kid who is dressing up as a heroic adult, right? And that is kind of what you get with Zelda. So, okay, this is a game that is designed for kids and is still difficult enough to be interesting to an adult. But in order to make it feel like an adult game, they've sort of made this character that's in a sort of transition between being like a infanty type character, but they've got a shield and they've got this kind of like Robin Hood elf type costume on, and it feels like a young character trying to cosplay as an older heroic character, and that's what makes those games feel like a kind of cross generation game which could be enjoyed by a child or an adult. Whereas this art style, where it just feels a little bit like kind of medieval Paw Patrol, it looks like something that you'd see in a Korean animation aimed at like 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And I think if you want it to feel a little bit older, you need some sort of edge with these characters. And it might be totally fine. It might be that you are aiming for that younger group. But I always feel a bit wary when people are making like indie games that they intend to sell on Steam or something like that. If they feel babyish, it's not that there aren't people that buy games for their kids at that age. But I think at that age, kids tend to be playing on like iPads and stuff like that. Or if they are playing kind of quote unquote grown up games, then those would be like they'd already be on Roblox or Fortnite or something like that. So you're getting such a small slither of the audience if you don't aim your kind of charming, cutesy children's game at adults at the same time. And I think there are ways you can do that with this art style, but just needs a bit more. It needs a bit more swag, and I don't know what type of swag that should be, but that's kind of down to you. You've done it. All the baby chicks are safe. Thank you so much for your help. I'm feeling much more at peace now. The air slightly stirs. On its gales, you hear a faint whisper. Yeah, I think the kind of... Yeah, exactly. Who is the game for? It feels very childish in the presentation. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I think you're better off aiming for like something that is child safe but would be appreciated by adults, right? My reference point for that is usually things like Steven Universe and Adventure Time, which are a little bit more kind of grown up and psychedelic in some ways, but all of the grown up stuff can just like totally go over your head if you're a kid, you know? Good afternoon. What a beautiful day. Lovely weather for fishing. Unfortunately, I have been super lucky so far. I have only caught a single glimmergill. Truth be told, I mostly enjoy fishing for sport. I refuse to do fishing in any game. Because if I was to compare this to like Spyro or Skylanders, it currently reads as being for a younger audience than Spyro or Skylanders. And I think Spyro, Skylanders, in terms of like the character designs and like, you know, they're a little bit edgy, they're a little bit dangerous, but they're still kind of child safe. That is kind of probably the area you want to be aiming for this type of thing. Who's this guy? I'm starting to get hungry. Who knew what I could really... You know what I could really go for right now? A nice sizzling fried eagle egg. Unfortunately, I don't have one right now. Maybe you could help me out, though. There's an eagle nest up a bit higher on the island. I bet you can find eagle eggs up there. Would you be able to go up and get one for me? Otis, you're a grown man. Okay, he's afraid of heights. Okay. They've given a good reason for this man sending a small child to go and get him an egg. That's an example of where the extra dialogue actually did something. Because I'm thinking, why do you want me to help you? You're a full-grown man. Go and get your own egg. And then he goes, I'm terrified of heights. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, Otis. You just sit on the beach and wait for a child to climb up a mountain and get an egg for you. But, I mean, all of this does come back to that character design thing of... like, how do we make it feel appropriate for this character to be running around doing errands for them? I think there is something very, very smart about the way that Link is designed in Zelda, because they feel in an in-between between like an adult and a child. And that's kind of irrespective of how old they are actually, you know, that the game actually tells you they are, or what life stage they tell you they are. It's like the visual style of the character. There's a similar thing with, I've been listening to the Shelf by Genre podcast is doing all of Tolkien's stuff this year. And when they were reading The Hobbit, they talked a lot about this, how kind of Bilbo Baggins, even though he's ostensibly like 50 during The Hobbit, he's written as this kind of naive character. And The Hobbit was written for children, right? So he's the character that like represents a child. And whether you want to frame that in terms of like the hero's journey or whatever, but you've got this kind of young, naive character going out into the world, but they're like, I'm a big boy now. I'm gonna get a sword, and I'm gonna like, you know, I'm gonna. There's like having characters that are in this kind of teenage transition between looking a bit young or seeming a bit young, but having some of the trappings of like a hero at the same time. I think that is the ideal character design for anything that is trying to occupy this sort of charming, childish space, but still be a game that an adult would buy and enjoy. Too thin, too bland, not enough zest. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to mutter at you. I'm just working on this stew and can't get it quite right. I travel far and wide in search of different ingredients in the pursuit of creating the perfect dish. I think I'm close to cracking the right recipe. There are ingredients on this island I can use to get this stew tasting just right. Whisperwind Peak is renowned for its magic after all. What I need is the flesh of an adult human man who is scared of heights. Well, that took a turn. Okay. She wants some broth cap mushrooms. It's also quite a... If it was going to stay with this kind of more childlike art style, there's a lot of text at once. So, like I say, this art style is telling me that this game is for someone that's aged like 7 or 8, something like that. The amount of text is too much for someone that age. So, it's not necessarily that it's bad for the game to be this way or that way, but you need to make all of the parts of it align. And a kind of... you know, collectathon with fetch quests that are like single-player MMOs type stuff. Everything that I see here is what you would see in one of these games on Roblox, like a kind of adventure, questy type, low combat type game would have all of these things in it. But the audience for that is already there. So you've got to kind of work out who this is for and like ramp some of it up a little bit, if depending on what you decide there. The pool stirs softly. As you gaze into its depths, you think you can hear a faint whisper in the air. You listen carefully and think you can make out the words. Those who spread their wings may glide across the breeze. Offer one whisper. You focus on the whispers you hear. With a rush of wind, you get some sort of power. Are we doing a Metroidvania? Are we getting a... You learned how to wind drift. Press and hold the left trigger while in the air to glide. Oh, yeah, because I'm supposed to be... See, this is kind of something that's completely gone out of my head since the start of the game. We're supposed to be a sorcerer's apprentice, right? Which is why we have, like, on a little blue tunic. It's like Balthazar, who abandoned us. I think we could maybe have... I think if we come back to... I know I keep coming back to this character design thing, but if we could do a little bit more to amp up the idea that he's trying to dress like a wizard, but he's not properly a wizard yet, I think that would do quite a bit. We're going to wind drift with the left trigger. So we've learnt an actual magical spell thing. And now we're starting to get into, you know, doing progression stuff that allows us more mobility and allows us to access to more areas of the island. But it does it through the kind of the fantasy that's been established at the start of the game is like you are learning to be a wizard, which is cool. That all kind of fits together for me. The wind drift feels quite nice. I just want to try and get over one of the bridges with it to see if what's there is interesting, and then we'll probably move on to the next game. Yeah, I think maybe we're going to get a little bit more of that puzzly stuff as we move around. Here we go, and that takes us over here. I like this kind of very gentle Metroidvania thing of like unlocking new mobility things that allow you to get to different parts of the island. You listen carefully and think you can make out the words. Those who trust the wind may rise twice. I don't think I had enough whispers for that. No, I only had one. Just going to see what people are saying in the chat. I'll scroll up a little bit. Someone said it's not quite landing compared to something like a short hike. Well, let's just see what the dev said in their notes. So, Whisperwind Peak. Still a prototype, a little rough around the edges. The UI is atrocious. I think you can get quite far with the UI in this game just by upgrading the typography. Because it feels like such a placeholder font. And if you use if you want this to feel charming and childlike, use a font that has like rounded tips. So like the one that I've been using recently is... This is the one that I've been using on all my thumbnails and stuff. This kind of thing feels like a sort of 1970s kids show font. And it just immediately... Hello, I am Balthazar. I'm going to abandon you on this island. Having a rounded font like that allows you to keep that easy to read sans serif thing, but just makes it look a little bit more cute, and it just immediately looks more like a deliberate choice. This doesn't look like a deliberate choice; it looks like a default, and just picking something that looks like a deliberate choice just elevates things immediately compared to having that kind of very, very default looking thing. Let's have a look at a short hike, because I think, Robin, that is an interesting reference point, because a short hike is probably a really good example of... I'm going to look up Quest 64. I'm going to look up a short hike, and we're going to like work out these as kind of comparison points. Quest 64. I never played this. This is like we've got Ocarina of Time at home, right? That's very cute. But even then, look at the character. They've got like the aggressive eyebrows. They've got like a sense of a little bit of kind of chutzpah about them. And that's how you make a game with a kid character that an adult is still going to want to play. Whereas in Whisperwind Peak, it feels so gentle that we're in kind of Paw Patrol territory. And we've got this theme of like, you're going to go around the island and help everyone. And that feels very, very gentle. And that's okay. I don't think that there's necessarily anything bad for that. But it does kind of communicate that the game is aimed at small children. We all have that game. Yeah, I think putting some more stuff on the island. And when you come to like... When you come to decorate the island as well, think of it in terms of biomes, because that will help a lot. That helps a lot with navigation in 3D games, to have like an area with one type of tree and an area with a different type of tree, or like places where the cliff is a different color, because all of that helps people with navigation. And it also creates a sense of like achievement when you find a new area and it's like, oh, it's different here, and I found a new, I cross a hill and I see a new thing. All of that is like part of the benefit of what you get from having a game in 3D, and particularly a game where you're either in first person or third person, the camera's following a character around. The kind of psychological gratification of turning a corner and seeing that there's something new, or turning a corner and seeing your way back around to somewhere that you got before, like you get in Souls games or you get in 3D Metroidvanias. All of those things are the benefit of having a 3D game. So when you start to add visual variety to your game, don't go down the route of like, oh, I've got a bush, I'll go around and put it everywhere. Like have an area of the map that has loads of those bushes, and maybe one other area that has them sparsely, and one area that doesn't use them at all. And then the same with the trees. Have 3 types of tree, have an area that just has one, have an area that has a mix, and have an area that just has the other one. Because all of those little variations that you make between areas will give the areas their character, and that will have knock-on effects in terms of how the player feels as they explore the space. The thing with the short hike is that this kind of anthropomorphism, I don't know what it is, but this to me doesn't communicate childlike. And I think the reason for that, I mean, obviously it is childlike. You could have like a book aimed at small children that looks like this and it would be totally appropriate. But there's a reason why it doesn't feel exclusionary to adults. And I think it's predominantly the color palette. This color palette makes it feel a lot more mature. There's something about having a slightly more autumnal color palette. None of these greens are like a plasticky pure green, and it kind of makes it feel a little bit more like it's about like there's something slightly, even though it's very warm colors, but the autumn kind of makes you feel a little bit melancholy and stuff like that. It's kind of similar to Cult of the Lamb, where Cult of the Lamb is an art style where if you just took individual parts of it, you could think this is for 5-year-olds. But when you look at the overall art direction and the color palette choices, even before we get into thinking about the fact that it's about a cult and there's demons and monsters and gross bugs and stuff, the color palette choices of having like this more autumnal kind of like mulchy set of colors kind of communicates something slightly different. I mean, the color palette in A Short Hike is very similar to I mean, Over the Garden Wall is much more desaturated, right? So you're immediately getting something that feels a little bit more somber and scary, but there's just something about using more kind of browns and oranges and everything that makes it feel a little bit more adult. There's also the fact that an anthropomorphic character that is an animal has less kind of clear signifiers of who they are socially, whereas this guy is clearly a little boy, this guy's clearly an old man. They're just both some white people of various ages. They become specific people, and when you have anthropomorphic animals and stuff like that, you can just project onto them. And I'm not necessarily talking about furry games, but like when a character is an animal, you kind of read their gender and you read their age and stuff like that. But I guess what I'm saying is the creator has a lot of control over how much of their kind of personality comes across. Like, does the character even have gender markers? The bird from Short Hike, I wouldn't be able to tell you because I haven't played the game. I don't know if they are referred to with any pronouns, but there's nothing about their visual design that tells me who they are. And that's a slightly different thing from like how old does it feel. But there's something about this character design that it feels like, you know, this guy looks like a very young kid that is a boy, and that's who this is for. And to bring it back to Link again, Link is kind of an androgynous looking character as well. So you've got all of these different factors that add up to sort of tell you who the game is for based on the art style and like who the characters are. And the Japanese games that have like a cute little dude character that still feel appropriate to adults, there's a lot of things that go into that, and a lot of it's to do with like, you know, there's visual complexity of the game, like how much is in the game world, which in the Whisperwind Peak game you just haven't done the level design of placing all those objects yet. But there's also like, does the character look like they have a bit of an attitude? You know, do they look a little bit bratty or like some sort of unruly character? Because that goes a long way, I think, in making a having an appeal that crosses generations. Okay, that was very kind of charming. Obviously, lots of things to think about there in terms of if you want to do something bigger with that. But, you know, very charming start to a game. We're going to check out Replis now, which I thought I'd downloaded, but I haven't. So I'm going to download that now. I haven't played this for a while. This is like a kind of first-person puzzly type root trees type thing. And I'm gonna download Avoid the Void and Trickshock Tactics. We've seen on the stream before, but I'm gonna go for 3 hours today, so we will come to those ones at the end. Give this a few more seconds to finish downloading. I'm Player. There's links on the screen for submitting games. I generally don't play stuff that's deliberately made for kids because it's an indie games channel. So hang on, 0.902. Yep, that's the one. Mascot shaped, yeah. Carnholt devs here now. Yeah, I'm gonna play a longer stream of your game at some point because I love kind of CCGs and stuff like that. I get into it a bit more. want to see what it's like playing as different characters and stuff like that. So it's kind of how these community streams work. You know, everyone's game gets played at some point, and then some of them, just the ones that are more to my taste or are more further along and more polished, I'll just do a separate stream. I only do that once or twice a month depending on time, but when you're doing a channel like this, you have to take breaks to just play something because you think it's cool and you like it, otherwise you go mad. This game is designed to challenge you as a detective or mystery solving person. To solve this mystery, you will need observation, deduction, exploration, experimentation, and puzzle solving skills. You won't be helped or assisted by the game. We recommend taking notes and in-game photos or screenshots while playing to keep track of information to help you deduce and solve this mystery. I would really, really recommend making that an in-game feature eventually, just because the UX of having to like quit out of the game to look at your screenshots and stuff, you know, it's an opportunity to have a nice little gimmick in the game of like a camera or something. I've been on and off. I've been playing Season on the PS5, which is a really, really nice game about scrapbooking and photography and like learning the history of a place. And there's a lot you can do with a camera mechanic. I found a clue as to what happened to your mentor. I'm just going to turn the audio down a little bit on that. Long story short, turns out that Alex bought a car, equipment and house in a small town located in a big desert just before disappearing years ago. Weird. That doesn't explain why she suddenly disappeared, but at least she doesn't seem to have been kidnapped. To me, it looks like she went into hiding, maybe because of her job. Whistleblowers tend to grow enemies fast. Gnar said, feels like indie games could be kid games to me. Yeah, I'm always a bit wary when someone tells me that that's who they're designing for. Because I think people use it as a kind of get out of jail free card for making a game that's actually a game. You know, people say something is educational. It's kind of like when people say something is a joke. You know, often people make something that's deliberately bad or they don't put much effort into it. And then they go, oh, it's just meant to be a joke. It's just a bit of a laugh. People do the same thing with like things for kids. And they just don't, you know they're not very good at something. They don't want to put too much effort into it. So they go, oh, it's just for kids, right? And I think the good things that are just for kids also work as things for adults. So whenever anyone sort of says to me, I've made this thing for kids, I just think, yeah, okay. You're not, I don't think it's a good place to start with pitching something to someone. Anyways, you will travel there to find her and have an explanation. Her family was right to ask her favorite Padawan for help tracking her. One definitely needs a hacker. Oh, my mistake. I mean a cybersecurity expert. Okay, so we're playing as a hacker. We're going to look for our missing friend who has possibly been disappeared as some sort of whistleblower. You're going to have to get someone to do, like, a bunch of checking on this. You've got whistleblower with no H. You've got enemies with 2 N's. Make sure that all of your text in your game eventually is in some sort of localization spreadsheet, because that means you can get a proofreader to go through it very easily without them needing to touch your game engine. And in a game where people are reading a lot, it's going to be really important. Like, if someone plays a lot of literary, like, text-based mystery games and they come in and they find a bunch of errors in the first block of text, it's going to immediately put them off. I'm sending you brand new safer phone, meaning empty, through the usual way with the coordinates, some helpful instructions and all the info I gathered so far. Take that one instead of yours to avoid anyone following you. We don't know who she was hiding from. I think if we're using Padawan as a reference to show you some characterization about what sorts of people these are, I think then Padawan is probably totally fine. Just like having a conversation about the Death Star in a movie like Clerks is totally fine. They're not being called a Padawan because there's something in this world called a Padawan. They're being called a Padawan because the character is making a Star Wars reference because they're a tech nerd and it's doing some characterization. I can see, I mean, my spelling is terrible when I write things. People are always proofreading my Patreon posts and stuff for me. And I chalk it up to, hey, I have to put lots of text on the internet all the time. But when it's something like that is going to be a permanent product, you've got to just make sure that there's a point where it gets checked, you know? That wasn't too bad, the loading. I've recently grown a little bit wary of 3D Godot games because I've had a few that took ages to load, but you know, once we're in, it's not busting us up like a lot of the Unreal games do. But I've noticed a few 3D Godot games just sort of taking ages to load up all everything in the first place. The folks of Red Vale. So Mayor Taylor, 2023, the folks of Red Vale are to be relocated immediately to White Sands City, the closest neighbor city. So we've had an evacuation. Contact me, River House. Miss Clark for access. I like that you've got this additional feature of like anything that's handwritten, you can read it this way as well. That's how Season does it. Okay. So last time I played this, we had this entrance, we had this diner. I went in the diner and started looking around. What a beautiful river. I've got a cup. Unlock using cup. Dang. Cannot unlock it using the cup. Following the recent drought and drying of Provicio River and the other terrible events of the past few weeks covered by your preferred journal, all the townsfolk of Red Vale have been evacuated from their homes yesterday at the 16th of April. Red Vale's leader, Mayor Taylor, took that decision after contacting White Sands' mayor to help with the local situation. There's no other way, he commented to us before isolating himself in his hotel room as he seemed completely exhausted. White Sands is the closest neighbour town to Red Vale to have the capacity to welcome its small population. To avoid any more crisis, temporary hotel rooms were made available to the Red Vale people for a few weeks until they can find their footing again. So if we're super invested in the story, we've already been thrown a curveball here because one person has told us, go and look for our friend. You know, maybe they've been disappeared because they were a whistleblower. And then we get here and we're immediately presented with another reason why they might be missing. And either or both of those things might be true, but it just immediately presents the situation as a bit more complex than what we're initially being told, which is go to this place, there is one person missing. We go to this place and actually everyone's missing. Whether or not those are the same things or not is now what we've got to find out. So now we're led into a more interesting situation of, rather than just like the beginning of the game telling us what we need to do, now I'm like actually intrigued to find out what's happened, because I, as a player, have been presented with two different things that could have happened, and now I'm interested in this kind of like fuzzy space between them. So yeah, pretty good way to set things up, because we get that initial call to action from the other character, and then we come here and it's immediately kind of thwarted in some way by other stuff that has gone on in the world. We can go in the Wooker. Bit dark in there. I don't like to poo in the dark. Provisor. What's round here? Read note. Danny, in case you need to get something after the closure, I hid the key in the usual place near the entrance. Remember to put it back before leaving. That is too verbose for something someone would write on a post-it note. I'm not saying that just to be pedantic. I think that what this game is going for in general is a sense of social realism. So I think this is like you've tried to hedge your bets and explain why the character would leave this note, because you don't want to do the video game thing of like just telling someone where something is on a note or a computer log or whatever. So you've sort of over-explained it. And I just don't think if someone was writing this in a post-it note, they would explain that much. Danny. Key in usual place near entrance. Put back before leaving or something. Just something like briefer so that we know that so that it feels like a post-it note, because it doesn't at the moment. Got a lighter. You've got this system where you can pick stuff up and then you can kind of right click to place it back down. That feels okay. It's a little bit clunky, like the interaction between the two buttons, but we're not playing Skyrim here. We're doing a puzzle game. So I think I would be reasonably tolerant of that over the course of playing a long game. Okay, so near the entrance, could be in one of these pots. Is that it? There it is. Got it. Okay, that doesn't open that. We've got to open the other door. Which is weird, because it said... Danny, I lost my lighter when cleaning up the other day. Okay, I know where that is already. Use these candles. It feels like a weird mix of game types, because it sort of feels like a kind of classic Scum-V point and click adventure in terms of all of this. Oh, I've got to go and get the lighter to light the candles so that I can go in there, blah, blah, blah. But we're doing it in this very physical kind of simulationist way. I like it, but it is a strange mix of things to me. It feels a little... the last game I played like this was... Is it called The Observer? The game that what's-his-face from Blade Runner did some voiceover stuff in. Is that what it's called? Sort of sci-fi detective game. A tourist pamphlet about Red Vale. An old small town in the middle of the desert. Okay. Come for refreshing times at the River House. Look at all of these peeps. That would be funny if these were like 1950s poster people on the actual 3D of the game. Okay, we've got a candle. Finally, I can poop. What does this say? Don't forget to clean the tables outside before leaving. Some pigs have to mess out there. Hello? Hello? I need to poop. Multiple pages on the pamphlet. Okay. Most people miss that. Yeah, we gotta... Let's go and try and work out why. Let's try and work out why people miss it. But not till I've had my lovely candlelit poop. Is a man not entitled to the occasional candlelit poop? Point at a flat surface. I would like to put it on there. Okay, no text there yet. Okay, so you've got a page marker here. I would just look at the location of that bit of the interface. It's probably the quickest thing you can experiment with to, you know, deal with this. The other thing you could do is put it right next to this. Because people seem to know that this is an option. And I haven't remembered which button is read or examine, so I must be looking at this each time to work out what I need to do to bring that up. So I would put this here. I mean, the other thing is you've got controls down here, so if you're going to have this, it probably needs to contextually update with these things. And if you don't want to contextually update it with these things, make it so that, okay, my controls go here, and then when I have a contextual control thing like this, just put it here instead, so it's just all together. It might seem less intuitive because you're trying to put it in relation to the document, but you've sort of already established that this is the bit that tells us what buttons to press. Watery entertainments for the whole family located at the biggest border of River Provisoire. Perfect oasis in the desert. Red Vale, River House, here we are. There's Red Vale. River dried up. Provides refreshment, food, and playful utilities for enjoying the water since 1997. Won the Red Vale Business Award several years in a row. Come visit to enjoy. I'll burn it. We've got a bag we can cycle through our... Okay, that is a little bit clunky, but I think you'll work that out as you build more of the game. But I don't think the interface for kind of going between things in the bag. Okay, it's not too bad. Using the mouse wheel is a lot more intuitive than using the stuff that it's telling me to use. Yeah, I can understand the desire to put burning things in every game. Right, we're keeping the key. The phone is offline. Oh, we can go under here. Uh-huh. Oh. Right, now that I know I've got an inventory and I'm not just carrying around one thing all the time like some kind of Gordon Freeman, I can I like that the lighter is still lit when I get it out of my pocket. Oh. Okay. This is very fiddly. Okay, put the lighter away. Take with the mouse. Okay, there we go. Order barbecue sauce. Must find better job. Order some aquatic balloons. Call the sheriff to check the abandoned cars. Order more pre-made cocktails. Okay. Be funny if you let me pick up these individual pins. I'm glad that you don't, but it would be funny. Take that lion. I love to pick up a lion. Take a box. Power has been cut upstream. Framed picture. Beautiful. Unlock using candle. Classic way of unlocking a box. I mean, surely that's needs to be powered for a keypad thing to work anyway. There's an electronic lock on the knob. Okay, so there's going to be a key code for that somewhere. Maybe I can try it even if this isn't on. But it seems like that should be on to make that unlock. Nothing happens. So the power has been cut to the entire building. So we're going to have to restore the power. Mechanical key locks. Okay, yeah, that's true. That is a thing that exists. And I should know that because I have interacted with them. But luckily I've got my brave lion statue. Missed the hint on one of the post-its. Okay. Abandoned cars in the parking, maybe? Something to do with the cars in the parking. Check under the stat, you know what. Under something that begins with T. Under the stat. Well, the goal is just to progress. I think when a game is at this stage, it's okay to just test if people can do some puzzles rather than like... I mean, we have been presented with what the goal of the overall game is. And then at the moment, it's sort of unclear why we need to do what we're doing in this specific location. Because presumably it's to actually get into the town. But how what I'm doing in here links to trying to get into the town is not clear. So I think that's probably the thing that needs some clarity. So check under the stat. Is it under the station wagon? Because I don't know what different cars are called. 7935. That's not going to be the password. Yes, the lion statue. Oh 0451. There are a lot of words that begin with stat, so I think making the clue use lion rather than stat is probably a good idea. What was it again? Sorry, I didn't actually memorize that. Oh 0431, wasn't it? 0451. Okay, 0451. Get my candle back out. Do 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 do. Valid. I have been validated by a button. Another key. Are we ever going to need to lock a door? Like being able to lock doors to me makes me think we're doing a chasey spooky horror game where you get chased by stuff. Which I don't think we're doing. Lights seem broken in the storage room. I put a lantern in the back outside. Use it. Do not enter with just your lighter. You'll break stuffs. Okay. Cannot unlock it using a lighter. Why not? Electronic lock system independent from the electric grid relies on big lithium-ion batteries hidden wherever you want, in or under the... Okay. Beautiful. There's a drawer in my drawer. It does work for me as a justification of the keypad working, but also now it makes me think that maybe it means something else, like there's a battery out there that I can use for something else. Because you do get like just mechanical keypads like the ones they put for key safes outside. You know, like people have them in the key safe for their spare key, don't they? They're just like click, click, click. So now that you've got that extra explanation, it does make me think that there's some other reason for it. Okay, so there's something in one of the drawers that was just too dark and we couldn't see it. One day, you will be king of everything as far as the eye can see. Even that, father? Even those rectangles over there? Even those rectangles, son? I don't like the look of those rectangles. I don't want to be king of those rectangles, father. There's a specific Monty Python character that has that voice. And I always used to use that voice in class when I was like sort of gently mocking students. Not like actual specific students, but if I was like pretending to be a generic student and I was like, oh, if you get home and you don't want to read your book and you go, oh, I don't want to read my book. And it's a voice from a particular, what the curtains, a particular Monty Python character. And then someone pointed out to me that one of the students sounded exactly like that, and it sounded like I was doing their voice, which is unfortunate, but, you know, that's what happens if you sound like a Monty Python character normally. There's a book there. Do I intentionally keep the tutorial info up? Yeah, they're not in the way of anything. What, this bit? It's not in the way of anything, so I don't have any reason to... You know, I'm not going to make that go away just for immersion because it's not bothering me. Riverhouse Business Journal. Another year, another journal volume. I have some great ideas to win this year's business award again. Yesterday we had a party to celebrate the anniversary of the opening of the establishment. All the employees past and present participated. There was also of a few more visitors. The mayor, Taylor and the doctor came for a few minutes. The doctor was accompanied by that foreigner woman who comes here often to get some of our coffee. I wonder if we should invest more on coffee. While Danny is a good young woman who does her job perfectly well, sometimes I wonder if youngsters have memory problems or if it's only her. She keeps forgetting the staff room code and have to wait for me to open the door. Okay. Business is slow. Time to experiment with new way to attract people traversing the desert. Danny has made a website, but I think we can go farther. People in town disappeared. Okay. Also, doctor, you know, that's a doctor appears and then people start disappearing. Sounds like maybe some sort of science fiction is going on here. The level of water of the river is getting lower and lower. I don't get it. Okay. The water is going... Unfortunate because this is called River House. There's no river there anymore. Terrible for business. Sheriff Truman barricaded the town's door. I had to change the drawer's code. I used the first opening, first business award winning and closing years of the River House. First opening, first award winning, closing years. Opening, award winning, closing years. Okay. Opening, business award winning, closing years. Okay, that's in chronological order. Let's go and look at this chest. Put the key away. That's no good. We don't need that. Clear hand. Okay, so that's going to be like 03, something, like it's the last 2 years of the year, I think. So when did it open? That's going to be in... So that the thing that I really like here is that this puzzle has now taken loads of stuff out here that seemed like fluff, that seemed like just flavor text, and turned it into puzzle clues. So now there's going to be something out here that has that information that we needed in, and all of the times when I saw it before, I was just like, oh yeah, this is just not important. It's just telling me about, you know, when the place opened and stuff, and what is that going to be important to? Okay, so 97 is the first thing. It won it several years in a row, but it only is happening every 2 years. Now, several means more than two, right? Strictly speaking. If you say several, like a couple is two, several is more than a couple. So let's say that's 6 years. So it'll be 97, 03, and then 23? Was it 23 when it closed? I'm just going to test that and try it. And if it's wrong, then we'll look around for more stuff. 97. 97. Oh. 97, 03, 23. Invalid. Okay. Just going to check this book. Doesn't have any of the dates in. So the journal starts in 23. January, February, March, April. Okay, so it's we got 97 and 23, and we got to work out the middle number. Crystal octahedron, maybe we should just do like a entire video of like things you can learn about game design from Monty Python sketches. That would be fun. There's so many like things where I want to do a video about pop culture and like game design, but I know that I will get demonetized for using loads of clips, so maybe they should just exist as Patreon only things. I thought it'd be funny once to do a video about things that game developers could learn from Prince. Just because it's such a weird crossover of things that most people wouldn't do, but I think if I did it, it would be funny. Where else have we had information about? So we had the award. The award happens every 2 years. There was something about the parties over here. So let me see. Where's my light? They won the award 7 times in a row. Okay. Yeah, there's lots of UX stuff to do with interacting with objects, which I do find quite clunky and hard to learn and hard to retain, but because it's not an action game, I don't think that's too bad. But it is something you're going to have to keep working with. Now, there's lots of actions where the thing to undo it, like accidentally extinguishing this by pressing E, I've done that with light sources a couple of times, and although I understand you want to keep that option in, I'm not saying get rid of it, but having it on like the general interact button is maybe the thing that's causing me the most grief. Two years between each award. Okay. It won it 7 times. Okay, so we're adding 14 onto this, aren't we? So that means that it would be 2011. Or the year either side of it, depending on which year it started on. I think it was 2011 or 2012, based on that. 97, 12, 23, I think. '97, 11, 23. 97, 10, 23. 97, 13, 23. Okay. Oh, yeah. 97 plus 14 is... How are you getting 21? The math ain't mathin' for me. 97, 21, 23. So 97 plus 14 would be 20, would be 11. Right? But yeah, I think it is too hard for this part of the game. I'm intrigued to find it out. 14 plus... See, I don't even know where the "we've won the award 4 times" bit of information comes from. Maybe it's in the journal. Yeah, I'm the poster on the pinboard. Okay. Oh. It's a lot of pinboards. Ah, okay. It was first looked at in September. Yeah, I think that the time math here might be a little bit too... It's not that it's too hard, but I think people are right to say for the stage in the game. Because if you make a kind of skill gate this tight at the beginning, then people are going to bounce off. If you make it further in, then people are already invested in completing the game because they got a certain way. But if people only been playing it for 10 minutes and then it's uber hard straight up front, I think you're gonna struggle. I think we're gonna move on because I want to check out the next thing. I like everything that I'm seeing here. I like the general spookiness. I think the thing that we need to clear up really is like... Yeah, you can brute force it, and I'm not going to, but so there's like a little bit of a disjunct here between, like, we're trying to get into Red Vale, and we just go over here and start wandering around and checking out what's over here because it's a video game. And it's just like, well, that's the only place to go. So it gets a bit kind of Stanley Parable type stuff of like, we'll just go over here and, well, it's a video game, so I'll do video game stuff. And everything else is so well explained in terms of the information we're given about how the world works. And, you know, even just like why the puzzles are there. You know, this isn't a Silent Hill where you've just got weird ass puzzles and the game is just like, I don't care. Like, I'm not gonna like try and rationalize why these puzzles are here. You've done a lot to sort of explain why the puzzles are there. Sometimes I think it's an overreach, like the overly verbose post-it notes, for example, feel like an overreach because then you're getting away from the social realism of like how someone actually would write a note to someone else. But there's a little bit of a disjunct between just like, why are we going over and exploring this building just because it's the only thing here? I suspect I'm going to need to root around in the other car at some point. There's going to be a lot of UX work that you need to do to like make the inventory and stuff just neater. But the main frustration I had with the physical object interactions was like accidentally turning the lights off or like accidentally locking doors that I didn't mean to because I'd unlocked them and then I expected to press it again to open it and it locked it again instead. So I would look at those secondary actions like turning something off or locking it, maybe have a different way of doing those so there's a little bit more friction because you've got it on the main action at the moment and it's a little bit of a little bit of a hurdle to sort of like do things by accident and then have to undo them. But it's cool. There's a cool mood to it. I think the puzzles up to that point feel reasonably well paced, and pacing puzzles is really difficult. We end up discussing this a lot on the channel, where they're like physical puzzles like a soccer ban or something like this. It's like you don't want to baby steps people too much because otherwise you might onboard a player that just doesn't like that sort of game. But it does feel like it ramps up a little bit fast with that last one. And it's really just that center clue. The when did it open, when did it close down, very easy to find. The when did they get the award thing, it's like I can see some parts of the how to get to that clue, like the 2 years apart thing. What I can't work out is which year did it start on, like, because the 2 years apart thing is like basically telling us whether it's an odd or an even number kind of thing. There's like I can feel where some of the components of the clues for that are, but I couldn't get to all of them. Yeah, maybe there's just a few too many steps in getting that piece of information. Okay, let me just get my spreadsheet back, which has gone walkies. We're going to check out Trickshock Tactics again and Into the Void again. These have been resubmitted. I only saw these very recently, I think, in the last month or two. So I don't know how different they will be, but I put them to the end of the queue because we'd seen them before. But we'll give them like 10 minutes each now. Both of these are card-driven games. Oh no, this is the one where you do basketball shots and then you get like little upgrades and stuff. It's kind of like basketball physics thing with Balatro type multiplier scoring. I hope we work out a name for that soon, because we can't be calling every game with points and a multiplier a Balatro like for like the next 10 years. That would be ridiculous. Love the little particle trail on the ball there. I didn't get it in though. I don't think numbers go up games is the right for I mean, incremental games are numbers go up games. I don't think Balatro is an incremental game. It's not obviously there's a similar appeal in terms of getting a high score, but not every game that has a high score in is just about incremental stuff, because incremental games usually are structured so you can't lose them. I would say that's a kind of convention of incremental games. I think as soon as you have an incremental game you can lose, you're actually playing like a more of a traditional business simulator rather than an incremental game. That's what makes, you know, I've chatted a little bit about this. I talked about it in the video I did about MMO 98. I don't think there is a boom of incremental games at the moment. I think incremental games just score higher on a bunch of metrics because they're a casual game format. And if you go and look at the category on Steam, it still has things like venture capitalist in that are like 12-15 years old, and that kind of shows you how long the genre has been big for. And it's just because they're casual, so they appeal to a broader range of people, because you can't really lose them. I really think if pick 2 modifiers, bonus shot and no ceiling. Okay. I mean, I don't really need to play a tutorial for this, so I'm probably not the best person to test your tutorial anyway, because the game is so intuitive that I don't really want to sit through a tutorial for it, because I already know how it works. And like all of the specific things, like what do these do? You've got the what's it called? The tooltips for them. We'll do precise aim on this one. My rim just too bouncy. That's good. You've got like that little negative boop boop to let you know you failed as well, which, you know, it doesn't make a massive deal out of you losing, but it's at least enough to like give you that emotional feedback so that you know a run ended. This one I cannot. I mean, the Vampire Survivors thing, I don't think it was a research area. I think that's where he worked. He just sort of worked in a gambling game studio and it was his way of getting out of it. Yeah. I would say, yeah, it's a bit overblown, but I think what it is a good example of is that the kind of best game you could make is probably, you know, the best game you could make is the one that uses all the things that you've learned up to that point. So if you work in a particular industry where you do something kind of tech or art or design related, then the best video game you can make is probably the one that uses that unusual set of skills that you've built up over the years that, you know, someone else making a video game wouldn't have. That's what people in like business call having an unfair advantage, right? You know, this channel, this YouTube channel, is reasonably successful because I've built it around the things that are my unfair advantages. And being conscious of what those are, it's like, it's weird because it can make you feel like you're kind of tooting your own horn. But if I go, okay, I've got like more academic training in a thing than most people, I've got experience teaching, I've worked on certain types of games, maybe I'm a little bit like more affable and funny than a lot of people that would make a game design channel. All of these things add up to become your unfair advantage. And that's why when I do weird stuff on this channel, like turn things into songs and stuff, not everyone likes it, but the people who do like it really, really like it, right? When I do weird songs about game design and weird Mighty Boosh humor, it limits the audience for what I do in some ways, because some people will go, oh, this is cringe, I'm turning it off. But making something really successful isn't about trying to get everyone, because as soon as you try and get everyone, you know, if you were trying to get everyone and you were making food, you would be competing with McDonald's. If you're trying to get everyone and you're making video games, you're competing with like Fortnite and Candy Crush, right? So most of the time with some sort of indie media, whether it's a YouTube channel or a band or a game, you're not trying to appeal to everyone. You're trying to make something that's perfect for a certain type of person. And I think the Vampire Survivors example is a good example of just someone like being very aware of what they're good at and making a game that uses those things and leans into them and doesn't lean into a bunch of stuff that they don't actually know yet. Which should sound like common sense, but the amount of people that are just like, I'm going to make something way outside of my skill range, which requires me to learn a bunch of new skills, and I'm going to have it done in a year, and then people will want to give me money for it. Like, if you apply that thinking to anyone else in the world other than yourself, you would just think it was completely delusional, you know? Like, let's say you're planning a wedding in a year's time, and you're looking at who's going to like come and play music at your wedding. You're not going to pick the person who just started learning a year ago, are you? To do that for you. Right, I need to pay a little bit more attention to this scoring, but I think something about the fact that we can just have a unrelated conversation tells you something about this game, which is that it is just quite chilled out. But I do need to pay a bit more attention. So I think we need to get the bounce. I don't like the bouncier rim upgrade. That made it more difficult to get anything in last time. I'm not finding a way to score the thing and get the coin. Problem. I mean, it's valid to steer in the opposite direction of your skills if you want to learn new stuff, right? But then you have to be like committed to learning that stuff to a decent quality, which I think certain people do that. You know, like look at Lucas Pope, right? Return of the Obra Dinn, second big game, first game in 3D, right? So that's a project where you have to learn a lot of new stuff. But they'd already had like a very successful game that was probably making them passive income, so they had time to learn that new stuff. There was some fun bounce there. There, that's the one. I don't know why we're still talking about incremental games though. A game where score goes really big is not an incremental game. An incremental game is a game where the score only goes up. Like, in incremental games, you cannot lose because your score falls down. They're not skill-based. They are, like, casual business tycoons where the number just goes up and up and up. That's what makes an incremental game an incremental game. Bounce your ceiling, bounce your side walls. I get all of the bouncier this, bouncier that upgrades are like the lower tier. I want to see what the other kind of upgrades do. Because I guess having more bounces is giving you a bigger multiplier though, isn't it? Just a million little bounces up there. That'll do it. Yeah, I think you can score by shooting it through the bottom. Quite difficult though. I would say the music is not what I would associate with basketball, but I don't have many references for basketball that aren't like early 90s TV references. Like I would put some sort of like chilled out New Jack Swing type thing on it. Yes. That was so close. That was really tight in terms of like what the target score was and what I was able to get. The Oracle. Longer trajectory preview. That sounds useful. Let's go for that. Crunch time is coming. Pick two modifiers. Low gravity and wide court. I like the way that these bosses are structured. So we have to pick the two kind of qualities that we want to do our boss round against. So we've got a wider court, so these walls have gone out to the side. And we've got low gravity, so everything's going to be slightly different from usual. But I don't think that's necessarily going to make it much harder because... let's go for the coins first. Right, now we've only got 2 shots, so need to make these really count. I don't think it's necessarily going to make it much harder because we can still see where it goes, right? So, I don't know. Maybe throwing it backwards so that we get more bounces before it goes in. Something like that. How about that? I don't think moving walls is the one. This is effectively a turn-based game. There's no real-time elements in this, so I think you could probably have more stuff in the arena, like stuff to bounce the ball off of, but I wouldn't venture into real-time territory because the appeal of this game is that you get to think about it for as long as you want. I also think the title of the game is fine. We had a discussion in the Discord about it the other day. You know, people expect tactics to mean stuff on a grid. I lost it. I didn't make it. But I think the word trick shot and just immediately seeing the game and seeing it's basketball is going to not make people think it's a tactical combat game. That was amazing. What a way to start. I forgot how the buttons worked then. Okay. It does feel like it need... I mean, we need to get a bit deeper in, but I would like to have some zanier sets of stuff. But I think we want to put that on the player's side rather than on the arena. Because we've already got the arena modifiers for the boss, right? So we don't want to... That's... For that to be meaningful, it needs to be the only time that the context that the player is playing in changes. Like when we get to the boss, the fourth quarter, and we have to like do the weird arena. So what we really want is to have like you say, crazy Rube Goldberg type machines, but built out of all of the little power-ups that the player has accumulated, rather than like the game throwing more stuff at us. An extra shot per quarter. Okay, I'm not buying anything. I'm going to save up. Don't want any of the things I can afford. Yeah, I like the idea of buying the things you can bounce off of. I played one. I played one like that was like a little billiards table, and you bought the things that you bounced off of as part of the kind of upgrade system of the game. That worked very well. They had like a number of hits you could do on them before they were destroyed. Bouncing on the rim. I think you're right, Robin. It's just kind of... It comes down to whether people actually do that in practice. 2 times style points if the ball doesn't hit the floor. That sounds fun. That one actually opens up like a play style. But yeah, there's definitely a kind of degenerate strategy where the player's just going to like scrub through everything until they see the thing they want to do. Which you could resolve with a timer. Guess you got to just see how people actually interact with it, but okay, so that score doubler when we don't hit the floor is giving us quite a lot to work with. Can't afford any of those. We're going to go bounce the arena and bonus shot. Bonus shot, is that a bad thing? Is that supposed to be a bad thing? Huh. Whoa, there was like a crazy... one side to the other. Oh, because the arena is way bouncier. So can we do something like... Yeah, I don't want to waste my doubler for not hitting the floor, so I'm just going to always go for it now, unfortunately. Oh, on the top there. That would be very funny. The problem is, Gnargnar, if I reference Pump Up the Jam, people will just know that I'm stealing everything from Philomena Kunk. Can we... The Philomena Kunk Pump Up the Jam bit is so funny. It's just like one of the funniest bits in that show. Got one shot left. Oof. Am I going to make it if I just do 1 or 2 bounces? Like that? There was it. It was there. It was there. I can't find it anymore. There we go. If we want to make the uncertainty about the bounce a bit stronger, I think we could just start with the actual predictive line being smaller as well. Two style points when launch angle is within 45 degrees of horizontal. Okay, we've got 2 doublers. And let's have a bouncier rim. So the first time we got into the semi-final this time. Okay, so I think this might not go very well with my other power-up. But it means that we can kind of choose which one to use, I guess. So we can do the 45 thing to do lots of bounces and get it in, but also there's no way of... So I can get it in without hitting the floor and we'll get a doubler from that. Or if I get it in or bouncing it around a lot, we'll get a doubler. But I can't see any way to actually shoot it in this range and get the doubler. And I think that's mainly because of where the ball has started this turn. Just not bouncy enough, so we're gonna have to go over there. Right, that's gonna get us both the doublers, so we're gonna get a quadruple score this time. I think a little bit more of an indicator of when these things are firing off. I think I said that last time, but like we just triggered 2. We're triggering 2 doublers. Where is the like celebration for the fact that I made both of the doublers fire there? You know, there needs to be a little bit of a indicator that that's what's happening. Double style points if the ball doesn't hit the ceiling. Longer trajectory preview. I don't want either of those. The style points come from, include the number of bounces, I think. Don't know if my number of bounces is counting for anything. I've been trying to maximize it, but I might have just made that up in my own head. Yeah. Number of bounces does nothing. Maybe there should be an upgrade that uses the number of bounces, though. I think it's just how long the ball is in the air, which is kind of a product of... Yeah, it's how long the shot takes to go in, basically. Triple your style points, but take some away per bounce. Interesting. Wall hater. claim 1-bit sound effects sound very, very similar to each other. I don't know if that is from Mario, but if I loaded up SFXer now, I'm pretty sure I could get to that sound in like a minute. No floor? Okay, no floor, because we never need a floor anyway. We're not bouncing off the floor. No floor. And low gravity. Yeah, you've got a nice big set of like different multipliers and add-ons in this as well, which is cool. Because that's what gives these games their shelf life, is like how different does it feel each time because you picked a couple of different upgrades. Yeah, it is kind of funny how the playstyle is kind of getting tighter and tighter as I add these. But that's because I'm going for like the big doublers and stuff. An extra coin spawns per round. Let's upgrade our economy by having more coins. Okay. I need more bouncy. It's so hard to get the coins and get it in at the same time. Yeah, having twice as many coins spawn just massively increases the chance that one will be in a place you can actually use. Didn't quite do it. That's great. One very small thing about the UI of this, it all looks very sleek. It all looks kind of like how I would expect a piece of basketball media to look, which is kind of good for the game, and it's reasonably minimalist, so like the emphasis is on the things that we actually want to focus on. One thing I would say is whenever you've got one of these UI panels, which is passive information rather than a clickable, what you've done at the moment is the clickables have these like finer, brighter outlines on, and then the stuff that's not clickable has like a thick outline that's not as bright. I would make this outline basically you want these to look more like a recess or something, so I would give them a darker outline or a thinner outline or just something to make this outline less of a bright thing, because although I can sort of see the difference between a button and a passive information panel, which is what these are, it's not always totally clear. This one's got a hover over thing for some reason, but yeah, these ones feel like these should look more like empty spaces with information in, and these should look more like buttons. And you've clearly got a style for those different things. Like this is an empty information panel, this is a button. But I think maybe the outlines on these information panels is a little bit too bright, and it makes it a little bit unclear which things are buttons or which aren't. That would be my main piece of feedback on this. I think I played it into a state where it was getting less interesting because I needed to do the same thing every time, but that is kind of a thing that happens generally with engine builder games. And I think the way around that is just by having a big enough library of random stuff you can collect so that the player doesn't always end up selecting the same kind of silly build that requires them to not touch the floor or whatever. Like, the more you expand that library of power-ups, the more you'll get away from that problem naturally anyway. We're going to check out Avoid the Void again. I like this one. I did use it as one of my examples of like a deck builder game where you start off with too many options, but I don't really know how you resolve that in this particular game because it's such an unusual idea. But this is the puzzle platformer deck builder where we play cards to build the level and to do stuff to the character as well, and we can pause the character at points throughout the level. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Lemmings, the way it does kind of puzzle platforming with indirect control over a character. It's neat. Press space to start or stop the player, and they go along, and they will jump over the small gaps themselves. You've done some lighting stuff so that these appear to be on the same layer now, so that's cool. All right, we'll put the double block there. This is a very pretty game as well. We'll put one of those there so we can get up. Beep, beep, beep. This lighting effect is really helping with understanding what layer the character is on, which was a problem that we had before. Just kept not really mentally recognizing these little spinning blocks as being like solid. So occasionally we hit a point where we can't use the cards in our hand, so we had to end the turn, and then this happens. You made him sit down when he's paused as well. The animation is so cute. That's great. That's really, really cute. Okay. That should get us to where we need to go. Yeah, that gets us there. Select a card to add to your hand. Wonderful. Yeah, so one of the things I suggested when I played this before, and you've upgraded the card art as well. These are gorgeous, these illustrations. I suggested that, and this is a general thing with deck builders, you can basically bake the tutorialization into the cards by making sure the player doesn't start off with too much variety, because then they can just read them, they learn what the rules are, and if you have like 5 things in your hand and they're all really different, that's hard to learn, and it's hard to start a run. If you gradually add the cards, then that's one of the benefits of deck building. But you know, there's actually a kind of tutorialization benefit to just not having too much complexity. What they've done is they've put the jump card that we used to start off with, and now they've put it as a collectible in the environment. That feels like we achieved something by getting to it because it's being presented to us as a reward. But actually what we're doing is we're chunking up the complexity of the game and adding it gradually. And because it's being presented as a reward, the player doesn't feel like they're playing a tutorial anymore, which is actually kind of fundamental to how deck builders work, is that you gradually add stuff. And that's kind of, for an advanced player, that's just the upgrade path of the game. For a new player, it also just keeps them away from some of the complexity for a while so that they can learn the basics. And that's a really good example of how if you just build a deck builder right, it will teach itself. Yeah, I love the lighting upgrade. Love these new card arts as well. We've got that. The energy resources is it a new color? Yeah, it is. This was like a pale. This was this pale blue color before, and that made it hard to notice when you were running out of energy. So this is like a very rare example where you've just kind of done everything I said, which is not what usually happens. Where am I supposed to be going? Hang on, have I lost the exit? Is it going to kill us to teach us how losing works? I missed the door. Oh, I didn't use the escape. You have to actually use the escape card. Okay, that's fine. I was talking too much. I'm going to give this about 10 minutes and then I'm going to wrap the stream up for today, I think. I've got other things I've got to get on with. I'm going to see Hamlet tonight, which probably makes me seem like a fancy person, but I've never gone to see a play live, let alone a Shakespeare. The last time I saw a stage show of any sort was Ghost Stories, the guy from the guy that wrote League of Gentlemen stuff. His like horror stage show years and years, like 10 years ago or more. So I will go get ready for that. I use my boosted jump. I don't have enough energy, so we need to end the turn. So yeah, gonna go see Hamlet, which my understanding is about. How does that work? Summon a portal to another level. That just ends the level, okay. Yeah, I just haven't been to see anything on the stage in forever. Cards. Building spree. Fill hand with fading singleton cards. So I guess a fading singleton is going to be a singleton that you only get that turn. But that costs 2 energy, and that means that we can only play 2 of them. I'm going to get another double. Yeah, well, I think a Hamlet is a small piece of ham, isn't it? It's like a smaller kind of gammon joint type thing. We have to press control to be able to zoom with the mouse wheel, which feels a bit strange, but fine. It's not that much of a bother. Ah! Occasionally finding myself click on the discard pile when I mean to click on the end turn. Or I didn't let him do his walkies that time. Right, so we go up there, there's a card pick up there, and then so we want to go up and back, and then back again. Let's do a jump. Ah, you can use the mouse wheel. Ah, that makes sense. Gotcha. We do reversal, we go back, we get the card. Spawn point for going back if we die. I keep getting stuck on this screen and I don't know why I'm there and I can't. Oh. Something was requiring me to discard a card or something, but I don't really understand. Triple threat there, so we can go down that way. Okay, I can't turn around yet because I don't have the card to do it. So I'm just going to build as much of the level as I can. We're going to get stuck there, though, which is going to be really annoying. Right, reversal there. There's an interesting dynamic in this where the more you build the deck, the less likely you are to get your reversal card, which you kind of... There's going to be a bunch of points where you really need that card. Which is kind of interesting. Interesting little thing to have to deal with. Right, it's going to wait up there and then we're going to reverse it again. When we can. Oh, we can now. I think no cards in the discard pile. Okay. Double, but okay, because it's because the art looks the same between these. There we go. So this one is create 2 adjacent blocks, and this one is move a card from the discard pile to the top of the draw pile. So it's just because it has the same card art, so my brain is going, oh, that's the same thing, and it's not actually the same thing. That's fine. That will just need its own like additional thing next to the block to make people remember what it is. Scurry on. Create a block and push the void back a tile. It's fine. Rewind reward, card reward, relic reward. Okay, so you're giving us a vague sense of what we get from this choice. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's scary. It looks like there's a lot of optionality here as well in terms of like how much you could risk going back to get things. Yeah, so when this came up before, I didn't know that was being triggered by that other card. Makes a bit more sense now. Walkies time. Oh, we've got stuff that breaks as you walk on it now as well. I'm not going to waste that there. I'm going to put it there. I'm not totally sure why. No, I do want to try and risk it for a proverbial biscuit. And go back that way a little bit. Is it worth it? A new winter coat and shoes for the wife and a bicycle on the boy's birthday. Go on. See what happens. Oh, he's just gonna... Oh. Ow. Call yourself a prophet. Is that what he's called? I don't know. I can't remember. I don't think we're going to do anything fancy. I think we're just going to get over that. There's such a wide space for like how well you could do in this game if you got really good at it. In terms of like going around all the level and hoovering up all the stuff. And that's really, really interesting. Have you pestered the Thinky Games people about this yet? There's an open Discord on Thinky Games. And I think generally, you know, it's not a developer's Discord, it's a fan's Discord. And that means they tend to have like reasonably high standards for things. Which I know sounds strange. But one of the things you'll notice, if the only times you go and talk about your games online are with other game developers, you'll find everyone's trying to be like really supportive all the time. And they won't tell each other when something sucks. Whereas people that are predominantly fans of a thing will tell you, they, you know, ideally politely, but they will tell you when something sucks rather than like points for effort. There's a little bit more of a culture in like game devs talking to other game devs where we're like, oh, well done for doing anything at all. I know how hard that is. And that's helpful to a degree with like motivation, but it's not helpful with improvement. This does feel like it's a standard of quality where you can start like showing it to just people that are puzzle game fans and going, hey, check out my game. I want that shiny up there. We're gonna do reversal. Oh, we can't do. We haven't got any energy. So, oh, I've lost my reversal. Bleep. I'm not sure what your but why was in response to. I think if you're open with people, people will play. You know, in that sort of Discord, people will still play like a low art prototype. But you have to be very, very clear that that's what it is before they take a look. I think there's an art to like telling people what is in your game and what isn't when it's at a prototype stage without coming across as being overly apologetic. I had someone once come up with a rule for like when you're serving people food at your house, you can only apologize for one thing. If you're serving people a meal and you go, I'm sorry the potatoes are a little bit overcooked, right? People generally see that as a politeness, right? They see it as a politeness for you to acknowledge that one thing is not up to par. And to go, oh, the potatoes are a bit undercooked. Watch out for the potatoes. But if you bring the meal in and start apologizing for every single part of it, it comes across as a bit self-pitying, and it also makes the person like, I think, like, well, do you hate me that you put so little effort into this meal? I think, you know, playtesting is slightly different because someone who maybe has a bit of dev experience or just has thought at all about the process of making games will understand that you're doing a low art prototype or it's missing that or the other. But I think being able to like summarize what to expect is in the game and what is not in the game very, very concisely, rather than having to give someone a list of million things, is like a good thing to be able to do. Because if you're saying, oh, please playtest my game, here's all of the things wrong with it, and it's like a list of 100 things before they've even played it, then they're not going to like remember what all of those things are as they play. Increase your maximum fall height by 1 block. I don't think I've ever hit a point in this game where I actually took fall damage, because every time I fall it's down a hole to my death. Start the level with a random rare or epic card. Cards that are sacrificed have 50% chance. I'm going to go for the random. And then we need to wait for our exit card to come back around again. So I'm just going to carry on building the level for a little bit. Because I can. But what we're doing is waiting for escape. There we go. I'm going to wrap it up there, folks. I really like this. I'm glad that you made all of those tweaks from last time. It's always really encouraging to just see someone like... Obviously, sometimes I'm going to suggest something and it's not necessarily the best solution to the problem. Sometimes, like, whether it's me or some other playtester will say, I think you should do this. And actually what they're telling you is, there's this problem in your game that I can't quite articulate, and I've just jumped immediately to the solution that I think would work for it. And that's why when you watch playtests and someone is having a problem, it's really important to understand what the problem is, rather than either taking the playtester's suggestion for a solution or immediately coming up with your own solution. Because if the problem is just people don't understand X, there's going to be loads of different solutions to that. And if your little mental your note you take, whether it's on paper or in your head, if your note is do X rather than solve the problem of Y, then you might come up with the wrong solution and then forget what you were trying to solve for. So that's the information you should take out of playtests, is like, what are the problems that we need to solve for, rather than immediately coming up with solutions. It is really encouraging when what happened with this game was I had some issues last time, like too much card variety at the start, not visually clear enough when the character is paused or not, you know, not visually clear enough when we don't have enough energy, all of those things. And the dev has just like immediately fixed those things in exactly the way I said, which is not necessarily what I expect every time, but it's always encouraging to see someone just immediately act on the biggest problems. I would say the biggest UX problem this game has now is just making sure people understand when the discard menu comes up because it's triggered by a card. Just make that transition clear that, you know, the card you just played is causing you to pick another card to go on the top of the deck or whatever. That was a little bit confusing the first couple of times it happened, but partly that was because the double back, I think it was called, card didn't have a different art. It didn't have different art on it, and that made me think it was just another of the same card I was using before. Because I think most people in card games, the name of the card is important, but very quickly you start reading the image rather than the name. So if you have two cards with the same image and we're supposed to like notice that they have different names from each other, people just won't, because it's not how we interact with cards in these types of games. Really, really like this. It's a real brain burner. I love the fact that you've managed to build a really thinky puzzle game that is kind of score driven and has all of this potential, like this really broad width of skill expression, where, you know, the way I played that level was like the easy way. There was a way to play that level that would have been super hard to go around the whole thing collecting everything, and having that really broad opportunity, like window of opportunity to go and do the riskier version of the game where you have to really, really work to go and collect stuff and get out of it. I mean, maybe there was a way of playing that as well, where you go to the middle of the level, you drop the respawn point, you go over to the left, you do the risky stuff. If the level is catching up with you and you're going to die, you deliberately jump off and then you respawn in the middle. So there's ways of using the respawn and the recall in this that I haven't even got into, and I probably wouldn't unless I was playing it for a few hours and really, really starting to build up my skill. But there's something really, really cool about this. Yeah. Yeah, well done, Erebus. This is really cool. Thanks to everyone who submitted their games this time. If you're new to the channel and you want to submit a game, this is how to do it. There's a form on my website. If you're a Patreon, then we have a special form that is just on the Discord in the Playtesting and QA channel. And like I said, in the next couple of months, I'm going to start merging these streams together. So Indies Under the Knife will just all be the same thing. If you're a patron, you don't need to worry about that. All it means is that at the start of a week, I will let people know which games are being shown, and instead of doing one long stream like this, what I will do is I'll pick 2 or 3 of the patrons' games, and then I'll pick like 1 or 2 games from the external backlog, and I'll put them together in the same thing. So it'll be like, you know, there'll still be a priority given to people that support the channel to have their games on stream. The difference will be that they'll be kind of mixed in together. And the benefit of doing that is that rather than having a stream like today where it's just whatever you guys submitted, we can make all of them themed. So we can have like 3 deck builders, 3 platformers, 3 city builders, all of that kind of stuff, which I do with the Thursday streams already, because I can see them way in advance. What I would do with the new system is I would take a couple of patrons' games, match them up, go, these 2 are puzzle games, and I go and look at the games that people have submitted over the website, and I go, oh, those 2 puzzle games, we'll put them all together, that kind of thing. So that's the goal with that, and I think it will help me to be able to do the patrons' games with more regularity, but to do them in a way that kind of puts them together with similar games so that we can compare. Because the benefit of doing that is when we're playing like, you know, 3 top-down action games or 3 first-person shooters all at the same time, we can start to compare things between them, and we can pick out a piece of good practice in one game and like compare it to another one. And one of the problems when you've got like loads of different games that are all different is that they don't have the same design problems. So looking at games together that are likely to have similar design problems is much better, because you can take the good example and then say, okay, what does this do well? What can this other smaller game learn from it? What are the things it needs to copy and the things that it doesn't need to do? All of that kind of stuff. And the more focused each stream is on a set of things that kind of go together, the better, I think. And, you know, obviously there are some transferable things between all sorts of games, but increasingly, the more that I do this channel and comment on games and think about games and genres and stuff, the more I think that, you know, every genre of games has its own game design stuff, its own sort of language, and there's not really, you know, obviously there are some universal game design things, but they are more to do with things like psychology and how humans read images and how humans store information in their heads and all of those kind of things, like the UX stuff that we were talking about with cards and stuff like that earlier. That's the universal game design stuff, but every genre of games is like a language to learn. So one of the reasons why we're going to tweak some of these things in the next couple of months will be to do with that, just to make sure that we can do kind of genre specific workshops or workshops on specific things. You know, maybe it's not even about gameplay. Maybe occasionally some of the folks from the Discord will go, oh, can you look at the art in my game, or can you look at the marketing in my game, and we'll do like a stream just on that thing. But the more specific they are and the less kind of scattergun, I think the more helpful kind of little streams and workshops we get out of that. Shock seems like I need to watch some card designing basics for that Cat Bowl game. Yeah. I mean, also go to stuff that's about, like, if you're making a game that is based on a card game or a tabletop game, go and check out the resources for that. Like, it doesn't have to be video games. Board Game Design Lab is really, really good. There's a podcast. There's a load of interviews with people. I listen to quite a lot of content about board games and card games, and it's partly because I don't get to play as much of them as I would like. And you would think, oh, you know, I do the same thing with role-playing games. I haven't run a role-playing game campaign in 2 years. I listen to other people talk about them all the time because that's my way of keeping up with hobbies that I don't have enough time for myself. The board game design space is really interesting. There's stuff like, just like types of games you would never have heard of. Like, let me see if I can find it. Like single player card games that happen in a single deck of cards, like this game Palm Island, where like it's just a game that you play with one deck of cards in your hand, and you turn the cards around to do different things. I think you can learn a lot from card games about UX and how they use symbols and how they use things like rotation to communicate different stuff. Really worth going and checking it out. Yeah. Hokapo said, someone wise said you shouldn't ask what users want, but find out what they need. Not related to game dev, but works for that too. Yeah, exactly. So you're the game designer. You ultimately still need to be making the decisions about what type of game you're making. And then when you playtest and you're doing usability testing and stuff like that, you're working out what the players need in order to actually find your game fun. Not necessarily how would they change it to make it into a different game. But sometimes those are the same things. Sometimes your game has this like glowing area that is really, really fun, and you're a bit too precious about this other stuff that's not fun. And what you really need to do is get rid of some of that stuff and make the game all about this thing that is fun. And you need to see other people engage with it to learn that information. But a lot of the time it's just like there is something in the way of someone having fun with your game, and you need to find out what that is. And it is about like, yeah, what do they need in order to like really engage with what this game is trying to be, versus just like, hey playtesters, tell me what I should put in the game. That works fine for thematic stuff. That's why you will often see like Kickstarter rewards that are like, design a character for this game, because they're not doing anything mechanical, it's just cosmetic. You ask people about that stuff till they, you know, till the cows come home. But the gameplay stuff, you really have to be in charge of that and have a vision, and then you're using the playtesters to help you identify what is getting in the way of realizing that vision. Thank you all for joining. I'll see some of you tomorrow. We've got a what is it tomorrow? What is the theme? What is the Indies Under the Knife theme tomorrow? It is games about playing a game on Thursday. Tomorrow it is Fantasy Tactics, Lootbane, Blood and Chaos, Heroes of Magic and Cards. I have to say up front, Heroes of Magic and Cards, probably in my top 3 worst game titles I've heard this year. Because it's not Heroes of Might and Magic, is it? Right. Heroes of Might and Magic, the Might and Magic are thematic things that exist in the game. They are like abstract nouns, I guess, but they are things that exist in the fictional world of the game. The Heroes of Might and Magic. Heroes of Magic and Cards, it's like magic is an abstract noun, and then card is a thing that doesn't exist in the fiction of the world, but it's like we play the game with it. It's like calling a game Heroes of Might and keyboards, Heroes of Might and joysticks. It's just confusing because it's mixing two things, and like one exists outside the game and one exists inside the game. I'm hoping to be pleasantly surprised by this, because that's just such a bad name. I'm sorry whoever came up with that name, but you need to go to game naming school. See you guys soon. I will enjoy my Hamlet, or I'll try. I probably won't understand a word they're saying because I'm not from the olden times.